in its 8th season. It's the ESPN Sunday Night Baseball Game of the Week. From Jacobs Field in Cleveland, the White Sox, the former Cleveland superstar Albert Bell take on the Indians, and David Justice on the Sunday Night Baseball Game of the Week. When Albert Bell made his first return to Cleveland in June, he was greeted by a raucous and hostile Jacobs Field crowd. But on this trip, the Indians have answered Bell on the field. In his first at bat of the series, Marquise Grissom robbed Bell. His second time up, it was newcomer Bip Roberts. Roberts also led off Friday's game with a homer for the Indians, and they crushed the White Sox 11-1. Then yesterday, Bell had a chance to tie the game in the ninth, but his drive fell just short, and the Indians held on for a 9-7 victory. And welcome to Jacobs Field in Cleveland. It's a beautiful night for a ball game, and as usual, a sellout crowd is gathering. Cleveland starting to pull away in the Central. Milwaukee was hammered again today by Boston, now 5 games out, and the White Sox fading quickly, now 7 games out. Hello, everyone. I'm John Miller. Welcome to Sunday Night Baseball. And as usual, it's always exciting to be here in Cleveland. And lately, the Indians are hitting the way Cleveland has been hitting these last few years. They, in their last 10 games, have hit 17 home runs with 7.5 runs per game. And Matt Williams, in particular, is real hot. Yesterday, he hit this home run, his first of 2 in the ball game. There's number 2, a shot deep down the line. And he's got a 22-game hitting streak going and 31 homers for the year. With me is my partner, Joe Morgan. And, Joe, I mean, this Cleveland ball club loaded with power, but Matt Williams is putting on a show right now.
Well, you're right, John. About 10 days ago, I had a conversation with Matt, and he said he's been more consistent because he's keeping his front shoulder in right here. He's keeping his hips in, and he's hitting the ball back through the middle. He's using the bigger part of the ballpark. Now, that doesn't mean he's not going to pull the ball if they get a pitch inside, as they do here. He does pull it, but his first reaction is to go back to center field. But the big deal for me is that when I talked to Mike Hargrove a couple of weeks ago, he said they needed a leadoff hitter and a second baseman. They got both in Bip Roberts, and he's doing a great job for them.
All right. Now, they're a little short in pitching. They've had a lot of injury problems there. And tonight, a rookie, Jarrett Wright, a very talented rookie, is going. But he becomes, particularly with John Smiley out with an injury, he becomes a key man for Cleveland's chances to go deep in the postseason.
Well, you're right. I saw him pitch a couple of weeks ago, too. He's got a good sinking fastball. As long as he keeps the ball down, John, he's able to keep the ball in the ballpark. When he gets it up, they can ride it a long way. And he's got some big sluggers on that Chicago White Sox team.
Oh, man, if he makes some mistakes, you can bet Frank Thomas, Albert Bell, Robin Ventura might just hit a few out of this ballpark. The Indians with their 330 home run men, Tomey, Justice, and Matt Williams, face the rookie Jarrett Wright. And, of course, the Indians have not yet taken the field, so we'll get to him a little bit later. A reminder again, the Milwaukee Brewers were beaten today by the Boston Red Sox 11-2. The Brewers, the closest team to the Cleveland Indians in the standings in the American League Central. They are now 5 full games out, but also 7 games out in the loss column. There you see it. Milwaukee's only got 21 to go. Cleveland, including tonight's game, has 25 to go, including 4 doubleheaders. That's pretty heavy duty this late in the season to have 4 doubleheaders still to play. Cleveland Indians now take the field. And there is young Jarrett Wright, the son of a former major leaguer. His dad, Clyde Wright, was a fine pitcher for many years in the big leagues, many with the Angels. And Jarrett throws very hard, 5 wins, 3 losses. And when he's gotten it where he wants to get it, he's had some great success. And we talked to his manager, Mike Hargrove, about young Jarrett Wright.
He's been around the big league game because he's Clyde Wright's son. And I played with Clyde, and Clyde was very good. And Clyde absolutely believed in himself. And you see those same characteristics in Jarrett. And for that reason, you put that with the stuff that you see out of this kid, and you think, you know, if this kid keeps his head on his shoulders, and he keeps directed, and he keeps working the way he is now, and I really think the way he will continue to do, then this kid has a chance to be, you know, one of the all-timers. I really believe that.
Well, that's pretty high praise indeed for the possibilities of success for Jarrett Wright.
Well, real high praise, but I think what he likes about him is his confidence. And he mentioned his father, Clyde Wright, who was left-handed, and he pitched a no-hitter for the Angels years ago. Well, I saw Jarrett Wright pitch on a Wednesday a couple of weeks ago, and the thing that impressed me was after the first inning, he got in trouble. When he kept the ball down, he was okay. He has a good sinker, a slider, and a changeup. And let's take a look at the defense for the Cleveland Indians. And the big addition there is Bip Roberts at second base. This is only his 4th start of the season at second base. He had not played second base any time before the trade, so his 4 starts have come here in Cleveland. And John, guess what? Another second baseman from Oakland, California.
Well, okay, from Oakland, California, but name one other.
Jeff Fry. We had him last week in Boston.
Oh, I see. You were Jeff Fry is the other guy.
Yeah.
Where were you from?
Oakland.
Ah, there we go. Yeah. I should have remembered that. Here is Ray Durham. And the first pitch of the game is outside from Jarrett Wright. And he is awfully young. Jarrett Wright, only 21 years of age. He grew up in Southern California, where his dad played, and began his major league career with the Angels. That is called a strike. 1 ball and 1 strike to Ray Durham. Dave Martinez and Frank Thomas will follow. Now, his father, Clyde Wright, played not only with the Angels, but also with the Brewers and the Rangers. Durham runs up as if to bunt, and the count goes to 2-1. Then, after 10 years in the majors, he went to Japan and played with the Tokyo Giants for 3 seasons. His best year, his dad's best year, 1970. And of course, Jarrett Wright didn't exist at that time. His dad was 22-12 with the Angels, and those Angels didn't hit the ball all that well for a guy to go 22-12. And that was the year he pitched a no-hitter against the Oakland Athletics.
John, the last time I saw him pitch, he struggled in the 1st inning, and then he seemed to, get his 2nd win, and he pitched very well after that.
3-2 the count. Jarrett Wright's last start was against Pittsburgh. We get a look at the foul pole. If you were sitting right next to the foul pole, that's how it would look if you were looking at the top of it. I mean, it is pretty impressive. Like a huge, one of those old Egyptian obelisks, Joe. In fact, that might be a better name for it, the foul obelisk.
I'll take your word for it.
All right.
It fits that description fits it better than the foul pole.
Don't take my word for it.
All right. How about the fair pole?
I'll get 40 letters from people saying, no, obelisk would not be correct.
Okay, there it is.
Marvis Kell, the Gold Glover, throws out Durham.
This is what he does best. Like I said, he has a good sinker. If he keeps the ball down, you will see a lot of ground balls. If you start to get the ball up, you're going to see some line drives. And take a look. You'll see this pitch here is down, and it's supposed to be inside, but it moves down and away, and Durham just kind of reaches out and pokes it to shortstop.
Now Dave Martinez, 284, 11 homers, 47 batted in. He's playing first base tonight. Very versatile guy. Can play all around the outfield and first base. Runs well, strong arm, and he's been a very fine hitter.
And he has really improved each year as a hitter, especially since he's been back in the American League. I mean, this guy has been able to just make sure he gets his at-bats because he hits so well, and as you mentioned, so versatile in that he can play a lot of different positions.
Pop foul. Matt Williams starts over, but this one will land in amongst the spectators. A lot less foul territory in this ballpark for Matty than the ballpark where he played for so many years out in San Francisco, out at Candlestick. Here, they have the stands, as they have really in all of the new ballparks, real out close to the real close out to the field.
John, this is definitely a hitter's ballpark. Not very much foul territory down the lines, any place.
Tailing fastball away. 2 balls and a strike to Dave Martinez. Jarrett Wright was a first-round draft choice. I mean, he was very highly touted, very highly sought. He was the 10th pick overall in the June of 1994 draft. Oh, look at that.
That's the changeup. And he's got a good changeup. That one was not a perfect location, but the speed really fooled Martinez. He was sitting on a fastball. But he throws a good changeup. The second time through the order, he starts to use the changeup a little bit more. And there you can see his hands the palm up. That would tell you he calls it would probably be more like a palm ball, but it's a very good one.
2-2 the count. And 3-2. His most recent start was this past Tuesday at Pittsburgh, and he took a loss. Frank Thomas awaiting his turn on deck. He went 6 innings, did Jared Wright. Gave up 5 runs and 7 hits and lost the game 5-3. That will go out of play. He must have had a great thrill, Joe, in his start before that. His last start in the month of August, he pitched in Anaheim, where he grew up, in the ballpark where his dad pitched for so many years. Not only did he pitch, but he also won.
Yeah, his father was there at the ball game. I was there at the ballpark. I drove down to watch that one. And his father was there. And he, like I say, he got off to a shaky start, and then he pitched very, very well.
3-2. To second. A broken back. Dip Roberts. Plenty of time. Martinez out number 2. And now Frank Thomas will come up with Albert Bell coming out on deck.
You know, at the All-Star break, there was a quote from Ken Griffey Jr. that said, you know, sometimes people take me for granted, you know, the things that he does because, you know, he had 30-something home runs. They said he was going to slump. Well, I think most people start to take Frank Thomas for granted as well, because every year he hits over 330 and drives in 100 runs, hits 30 home runs, and just kind of take him for granted. I mean, with the numbers that he has put up, no one's talking about him for MVP or anything. But, I mean, he's leading the league in the hitting. He has 31 home runs, 111 ribbies, and he missed a month of the season.
And the breaking ball is too low. I mean, Frank Thomas with a chance to be a batting champion as Albert Bell watches the big hurt from the on-deck circle. Thomas 357, 4th in the league in RBIs, and he was on the disabled list, as you mentioned. Meanwhile, Reggie Jefferson today had 2 for 4 for Boston. He is 2nd in the league in hitting. He's hitting 342. But look at Frank's average year these past several seasons.
I mean, that's why I say we just kind of take it for granted that he's going to do those things, and unless he hits 400 and hits 50 home runs, we're not going to get excited.
Well, I get excited.
Oh, I was going to say people won't get excited. I always get excited around him too, because it's special to do those things.
3-1 the count. Foul tip, 3-2. I think he swung a ball 4 there, but they don't mind that on 3-1.
He also told me that, John, that September is usually his long ball month. You know, he hits a few more home runs. He had one last night, of course, but he said he hits a few more home runs in September. He was a little behind, but he said September usually gets hot.
3rd consecutive 3-2 count to Frank Thomas. 2 down and nobody out. And the walk. And now Albert Bell is coming up. There's an Albert fan.
There are a lot of Albert fans here. In fact, when I was riding over the ballpark today, there were a lot of people saying they miss Albert Bell and they wish he was still here. I should say they miss his bat.
Well, I mean, they must have loved him as a player because, or they wouldn't have taken it so personally.
Right. That's a good. I think that's a very good point there, John. You know, if you don't, you wouldn't take it personally.
It's my first good one this year.
I was wondering. We're almost finished. I was waiting.
0-1 to Albert Bell. Now, as we showed at the beginning of the telecast, he is 0 for 8 in this series, but he's had some close calls. Grissom leaped up to catch one. He almost hit a game-tying home run yesterday, caught at the wall. Bip Roberts robbed him. And he chased that slider. 0-2. Albert not having the kind of year they'd come to expect from him here in Cleveland, but it's still a very good year. 27 homers and 100 RBIs. 0-2 the count. This time he lays off. 1-2. Of course, Albert 2 years ago, 50 homers, and then last year came back with 48 more. Also, his batting average is down 60 or 70 points from where you expect him to be. Of home plate. Bip Roberts near second. Takes it to the bag. Just in time to get Frank Thomas. And now the slugging Cleveland Indians are coming up. Roberts, Giles, and Manny Ramirez. No score. We'll be back. The Sunday night baseball game of the week on ESPN. The White Sox have been shut down in the first, and now Mike Hargrove's Cleveland Indians coming up. They've won 15 of their last 22 ball games, which perhaps not so coincidentally have come during the 22-game hitting streak of Matt Williams. And now the Pepsi Cleveland Indians batting order is turned in by Mike Hargrove. It'll be Bip Roberts, second base. Brian Giles, very powerful in left field. Manny Ramirez, also with great power, right field. Jim Thome, over 30 homers at first base. David Justice, the former Atlanta Brave, having a big year, 30 homers, the DH. And then Matt Williams, the former San Francisco Giant, in the hitting streak, 26 RBIs in those 22 games. Sandy Alomar having his best season, 329 average. The catcher, Marquise Grissom, the former Brave, who's also coming on strong at the end, the center fielder. And then the Gold Glover, Omar Vizquel, has become quite the base stealing threat for the Cleveland Indians, batting ninth. And on the mound, the veteran, the 35-year-old right-hander Doug Drabek, one-time Cy Young Award winner from the Pittsburgh Pirates. That ERA is terrible, but Joe, in the last couple of months, he has pitched a number of excellent games, including one on Sunday Night Baseball in Seattle.
He's pitched well as 4 out of his last 6 starts. So
Bip Roberts, and the curveball in there for a strike.
And talking to him, he said that, you know, he was standing more upright so he could get more movement on his ball and get on top of it. Well, he wasn't upright there on that pitch, which was a changeup.
That's a foul tip. 0-2 the count.
So maybe he's only going to try to do that on his fastball, because that pitch, neither of those 2 pitches was he up any more upright than I've seen him in the past.
George Fabregas gets nailed by that foul ball. Life of a catcher. 0-2 the count to Bip Roberts in his first game here in Cleveland. In his first at bat with his new ball club in his new ballpark, he homered. Look out. Well, he found a way to get on base.
There you see the outfield, and Albert Bell's out here in left field, and above here, a lot of security they have trying to protect Albert Bell. A lot of problems the last time he was here, and there are some officers out there to make sure no one runs up to the rail and throws anything at Albert.
That was the last time he was here with the White Sox back in June, because actually the last time he was here in July at the All-Star game, he just stayed back in the clubhouse. Here's Brian Giles, the runner going. He has it stolen easily. Bip Roberts with his 16th steal of the year.
Well, that's what Bip Roberts brings to your ball club. A little excitement, a little adrenaline here. You know, basically this ball club lacks speed. They do not have any speed. And here he got a great jump on Drabek, who has a high leg kick, and you can see not even close at second base. But now he gets himself in the scoring position, and it's up to Giles to pull the ball to the right side. You can score a run without getting a base hit, and that's what you want from your leadoff hitter.
Of course, Giles is not the prototypical number 2 hitter. And he got up the middle, base hit. It looks like he's got him home. 1-0 Cleveland.
Well, Giles did the job. He pulled it to the right side, and he found a hole. So he did his job both ways. He was going to move him to third, even if they would have caught it. So a good job there by Brian Giles. A good job by Bip Roberts. Let's take a look at this pitch. He was trying to get the ball away to keep him from pulling it, but Giles goes out and pulls it in the hole. It's a fastball away, but he just goes out and rips it. You know, the great thing about Bip Roberts, though, John, was he stole it right away. He did not wait deep into the count. If you go right away, you give the hitter his full at bat, so he has time to do whatever he needs to do for it.
Well, and that was his first steal as a member of the Cleveland Indians.
He's probably smarting a little bit because he got hit.
Now here is Manny Ramirez, and the big power is coming up. There's ball 1. Ramirez is hitting .329, tied for 5th in the league with his own teammate Sandy Alomar, but also 24 homers, 33 doubles, and 75 batted in. The 3 hitters directly behind him all have hit 30 homers or more this year. And Giles, runner at first base, has 16 homers. Only 318 at bats. That is a called strike, and it is 1 ball, 1 strike. By the way, I erroneously said when Giles singled home the run, I said he has got him home. I should have said he has gotten him home.
Okay.
Yeah.
I knew what you meant.
You nudged me. I looked at you. You were glaring at me, shaking your head. Just like Mrs. Pittenger in English class when I was in high school. I never studied. 2-1 the count. Out in left field, there's the security you were talking about, Joe.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what we're talking about, the guards up there. And remember, and I think that's a good idea because, you know, we don't need any incidents here, and you need to let the players play. And I think, in all fairness to Albert Bell, he deserves a chance, you know, to perform without any stress.
2-1 the count to Ramirez. It's a foul. Kind of hung that curveball out there. Ramirez out in front of it. Now they have also erected a barricade. There's an open plaza area behind the left field corner. Ordinarily, that's a standing room area. The fans can go right up to that wall, but they have cordoned off the area to keep them from being right out. And apparently there was some trouble back in June from that area.
And I think the Cleveland Indians have to be commended for taking these precautions.
2-2 to Manny Ramirez. Nobody out. Runner at first. High in the air to left field. Playable for Albert Bell. Number 1. Well, you know, I mean, Joe, it's all in good fun. He was a former Cleveland ball player. Give him the razz.
Right.
Make him hear the noise. But let's remember, it's still all for fun. This is a game. It's an enjoyment.
Yeah, don't throw, you know, metal objects and batteries and things like that because someone can be injured. And I think that's the problem that they had last time.
Here's Jim Thome. 36 home runs. 287 average, 94 driven in. Also a very discerning eye at the plate. He has walked 108 times. You get into this part of the order. I mean, if you walk Thome, there's Dave Justice on deck. He's having a big year here in the American League. And then Matt Williams, who has also put together a big year after struggling for a good part of the time, but he's red hot now. There they are, the two former National Leaguers. They're doing their slugging here in Cleveland. 1 ball and no strikes. Jim Thome. You notice, by the way, the Indians, Jim Thome has always worn his pant legs rolled up high, exposing most of the Red Sox. And on his 27th birthday, Dave Justice had the idea to say, hey, it's his birthday, why don't we all wear him that way? So they did. They won that night, and they've basically been doing it ever since.
Not only they win, John, they had a 10-run inning. I was at that game, too. I drove down to celebrate his birthday.
And you get around to first base. Martinez goes to second to Guillen for 1. Back to first, and the hold out by Martinez, but too late to get Thome. Two down, and Dave Justice will be coming up now.
Not a well executed double play attempt, because I thought they had a chance here, because Thome doesn't run that well because it takes a while to get out of the box once he takes a full turn. Good throw there. Let's see what happens. Ozzie was under a little pressure and did not get much on his throw. Now watch this. Ozzie stays at the bag. That's what gets him in trouble. Now the guy can find him, and Giles puts the pressure on him. Nice break up there by Giles. Definitely legal. Stays on the ground. You can slide as long as you can touch the bag with any part of your body, but you have to be able to touch the bag.
Here's David Justice. Justice, the one-time World Series hero of the Atlanta Braves against the Cleveland Indians. It was his home run in Game 6 in '95. It was the only run of that game when Tom Glavine pitched the game of his life. Now look what he's doing for Cleveland, though. He's kind of making up for it. 339, second in the league at the start of the day. Right now he'd be third in the league back of Reggie Jefferson.
See that contraption he has on his left elbow, John? That's to keep him from hyperextending his elbow again. That's what put him on the shelf for a while this year.
That's impressive looking, Joe. Right to second. Ray Durham, plenty of time, throws him out. Matt Williams will have to wait an inning. Robin Ventura coming up for the White Sox. 1-0 Cleveland. Part of the scene here from Jacobs Field. There's the Key Center on the left and the BP building on the right. Right down in the midst of the tall buildings of downtown Cleveland here in this beautiful jewel of a ballpark, Jacobs Field. as Robin Ventura takes a called strike from Jarrett Wright. Ventura had not hit a home run in his last 82 at bats. And the count goes to 1 ball and 1 strike. Kept his average up there pretty well, but the power is kind of dried up behind him. It's a smash down the right field line. Extra bases. Ramirez into the corner to go get it. Ventura into second base. His 9th double of the year. So with a 1-0 lead for Cleveland, the White Sox get something started immediately.
Well, when you get the fastball up to the left-handed hitters, they usually pound him, and that's what happened to the Angels. As long as he keeps the ball down, he gets the ground ball. You see that pitch is up about belt high, and he rips it over the head of Tomey down the line. And actually, if you watch him run, he looks like he's healthy, John. I mean, he doesn't show a lot of signs that he has, had that torn up knee. I mean, he looks very good right there.
Here is Mike Cameron, the rookie center fielder, and he takes ball 1. Cameron, 257 average, got 13 homers and 50 batted in 319 at bats. Also has 19 steals. Off the mask of the catcher, Sandy Alomar, 1 ball and 1 strike. By the way, Sandy Alomar is wearing mask cam tonight. This is what he saw on that last one.
Yeah.
And our thanks to Sandy Alomar for wearing a mask cam. George Fabregas also has agreed to wear it. And our thanks to the Major League Baseball Players Association people who helped make this happen, as well as the people with Major League Baseball for helping us facilitate that for you, our viewers.
What about the people who invented it? I got you there, didn't I? All right.
And our thanks to them.
Well, you were thanking everyone. I just wanted you to leave anyone out.
And we'd like to thank ourselves for ordering them to invent it. 2-2 the count to Cameron. Fabregas is on deck. Jarrett Wright. I wonder, Joe, it seems like they're more than ever we see the progeny of former Major League players coming to the big leagues. And that is how to play.
Well, I think part of the reason for that is most of the time they bring their kids around, and their kids just get excited at being in a Major League ballpark when they're kids, and they decide this is what I want to do. And as you know, if you put your mind to something and you have some ability, you can just about accomplish anything. And I think that's what happens in most cases. These kids want to be ball players so badly, they grow up and work hard at it.
2-2 the count. He got it to the right side. Nice pickup by Bill Roberts. He throws it out. Ventura to third. Cameron looked like he got a pitch in and was able to inside out it to the right side. Nicely done. Well, yesterday, Joe, mentioning the young players, how about Rose at third and Perez at first? How about that?
Isn't that amazing? There's Pete Rose Jr.'s first Major League base hit. He hits it off of Kevin Apier, and there's Senior. They're all there cheering.
Yesterday, Rose was at third and Perez at first in Cincinnati. That had a familiar ring to it. In left field, Fabregas tagging at third. Ventura, the catch by Giles. Ventura heading home. Look out! He slides and he swings. That was close.
A nice decoy at home plate there by Alomar Jr. I mean, Ventura thought he had it made easily. And Giles fired it all the way to the plate in the air. And it was a close play. Alomar Jr. tried to block him off split second sooner, and he would have had him. Now, Giles gets himself in great throwing position. Takes one extra step there, right there, and that's what got Ventura. Now, see, Ventura's coming. No one's up there telling him to slide until it's too late. I mean, someone should have been up there all the time telling him to slide, and that someone obviously should have been Ordonez. He's the next hitter. He's supposed to be up there telling the guy to slide.
Mike Leo Ordonez, the young right-handed swinger, got 3 home runs already. Off the end of the bat, over the middle, base hit into center field. Ordonez has been getting a lot of base hits since they brought him up. He's now 8 for 16 with 3 homers and 2 doubles in those 16 at-bats.
Not a bad start.
But obviously needs a few pointers about coaching his base runners when he's the man on deck.
Yeah, fundamentals. You have to be there to tell him whether to slide. If he'd have been there, maybe he could have told Robin to hurry up. Maybe we had him one more, you know, stride he could put in there and get there a little sooner.
And of course, Ventura hurt himself so severely on a play at the plate in spring training. There is Ozzie Guillen. Ball one. 2 down in the inning. Ordonez at first base. Ordonez was the most valuable player in the American Association this year. He has really gotten off to quite a start as a big leaguer. Ozzie, look at that, showing a real
Patience,
strong eye up there.
No, Ozzie Guillen's idol was Davy Concepcion, the former Cincinnati shortstop.
Well, Ozzie has walked 21 times this year, Joe, which for him is, I mean, it's like the most incredible patience he's ever shown. That's almost as many as he walked in the last 4 years combined. Ordonez running, but right throws out Guillen. 1-1 the score now. Here's Alomar watching that play happen at the plate. Matt Williams right here at Jacobs Field in Cleveland. I'm John Miller with Joe Morgan. Sunday night baseball. Next Sunday, we will be greeting you from another beautiful ballpark, Camden Yards in Baltimore. And the Orioles, with the best record in the majors, will be taking on the New York Yankees, a club they took 3 out of 4 from this weekend in New York to pretty well knock them out of any chance at winning the top spot. So we'll see Tino Martinez and the Yankees, Bernie Williams, Paul O'Neill, Derek Jeter, and the Orioles, Cal Ripken, Rafael Palmeiro, Brady Anderson. That's next Sunday, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific. Of course, they met each other last year in the league championship series, and many think they might end up doing the same this year. Here's Matt Williams, 261 average. That average has come up about 40 points in the last 6 weeks. Now with 31 homers. This is Draybeck deep into left center field. Manny's in a groove. This one is caught by Cameron. Just a little bit off the end of the bat that time, but every time he swings right now, the ball is just jumping off his bat.
Well, the one thing that he was doing there, if you watched him, he was trying to hit that ball back to center field, and I think where he got hurt a little bit because the ball was inside. This may be one that he could have turned on. I think the ball ends up right in here rather than out here on the corner, and I think he could have turned on this pitch. Yeah, see, that ball is more in middle of plate in. He could have turned on it, but he was trying to go to center field, and that's what's been successful for him, so he stayed out that way.
Now Sandy Alomar. And that's ball one. Sandy is hitting .329. Having his best all-around year. 17 homers, 72 batted in. Started the night tied with Manny Ramirez for 5th in the league in hitting. Third, Robin Ventura. Just like that, 2 men are gone in the Cleveland 2nd inning. Take a look at Jacobs Field. I mean, this ballpark has been such a huge success for the Cleveland Indians. The last 2 years have been sold out before the seasons ever began.
And you know what happened, John? Last week they had the series interleague play in Pittsburgh, and most of the people from here that couldn't get seats here during the season went down to Pittsburgh and had 50,000 people on Labor Day and gave them a chance to see their Indians.
Well, for 3 games there, Labor Day and then a Tuesday-Wednesday series, they drew nearly 140,000 for those 3 games. One of the greatest 3-game series attendance figures in the history of Three Rivers Stadium. And
of course, a lot of those fans there were Pittsburgh fans as well, but a lot of people came down from Cleveland.
Marquise Grissom into right field. Ordonez. He stayed with it. 5-pitch inning for Doug Draybeck. 1-1. Durham, Martinez, and Frank Thomas coming up. The ESPN Sunday Night Baseball Game of the Week is brought to you by the Delta Faucet Company. Delta, the faucet. That's where we used to go down to see the Indians play when we come down to town on Sunday Night Baseball, right down near the shores of Lake Erie. But it's not there any longer. That's where we saw Jose Canseco nearly hit one into those center field bleachers one night against a knuckleball. And it's no longer that giant, cavernous ballpark. A lot of history there, but now they've moved into this bright, brilliant, 21st century looking ballpark, Jacobs Field, just not that far away from where the old ballpark was, sort of on the other side of town, of the downtown area. Here's Ray Durham, the leadoff man. Well, the White Sox taking ball one from Jarrett Wright. Durham grounded to short his first time. 1-1 is the score here. The middle and through, base hit. Martinez comes up now, and then Frank Thomas is due up third in the inning.
Well, let's take a look at what it looks like from mass cam here as Durham goes out. That pitch a little off the plate, but he reaches out and lines it back through the middle for a base hit. You know, he's been swinging the bat much better, they say, since they changed hitting instructors, which, you know, we'll get into later on. But now that Ron Jackson and he has struck up a good relationship, he seems to be swinging better.
Dave Martinez now.
And that should not be a knock on Bill Buckner, because I think Bill Buckner knows a heck of a lot about hitting.
There goes Durham. It's a pitch out, but Alomar juggled the ball, and a steal for Ray Durham, his 31st steal of the year.
There is nothing worse for a team on defense to pitch out and not get the base runner. I mean, first of all, psychologically it bothers you, but you've also given up one pitch. Now it's ball one. Everything was there for him to throw him out. He got out in front of the plate. The pitch out was perfect. That's a perfect pitch out, and he just could not handle it.
Now Martinez to try and get Durham over to third base. He's going to try and bunt him over. Takes low. Against Jarrett Wright, by the way, this is obviously a special situation because it was a pitch out, but there have been 13 stolen base attempts, and look at that. 12 of the guys have made it. 2-0 the count to Dave Martinez. He grounded his second his first time, and they wouldn't mind if he did that right here. Terry Bevington. Big guys are coming up next. Frank Thomas on deck, then Albert Bell and Robin Ventura. There's Big Frank. And Albert played in this ballpark and had those huge seasons. Sometimes I wonder what Frank Thomas might do if he got to play here for his home game. Ball seems to carry well here. And especially, it really carries well out into right center field as Martinez ends up walking here. 2 men on, nobody out, and Frank Thomas hits a lot of balls that way because he doesn't ordinarily just try to pull everything. He takes it where you pitch, and he got that tremendous strength.
Yeah, he's not a pull hitter. I mean, Frank Thomas is basically left center, right center. You know, he stays in that area. He doesn't try to pull the ball. That's why he's such a good hitter. Very few guys pull the ball and hit 340, 350. You have to be able to use the entire field to hit that high average-wise.
Frank Thomas, he walked his first time. Nobody out, 2 men on. Ball one. Now this is one of those innings that starts to shape up as a possible big inning for the White Sox with these guys coming up. Men on base, nobody out.
Well, he doesn't seem nearly as comfortable with men, you know, from the stretch position. I think that's the problem that we're seeing.
2-0.
He loses his rhythm for some reason. He doesn't have the same rhythm from the stretch position that he has from the windup.
Look at Frank's done with men in scoring position this year. 419. Only Paul O'Neill has had a better success in those situations, and only 2 points better. That's pretty good hitting in the clutch right there. Especially for a guy that they seem like they walk most of the time when there's a dangerous situation. Mark Wiley is the pitching coach out there talking to his young right-hander. Jarrett Wright. Well, this is a big spot for the young guy. I mean, just what, 3 years out of high school, now on the big stage of Sunday Night Baseball, and Frank Thomas at the plate in a pennant race. Frank Thomas leading the league with a 357 average. The White Sox have not had a batting champion since 1943. Luke Appling hit 328 and led the league that year, 54 years ago. Oh, he got the corner on that breaking ball. 2-1. Here's Durham at second. He singled. Martinez at first. He walked. The outfield very deep. almost like he's trying so hard to keep the ball down.
That's a good point. I mean, his rhythm, he just does, you know, it seems like he just lost his rhythm. And that's from the stretch. And like you say, it looks like he's trying to keep the ball down, but he knows he has to.
Albert Bell on deck. Big pitch here. Thomas helped him.
Well, he made a good pitch, though, because they called that pitch a strike the last time. So this is another breaking ball out there towards the outside corner. And Frank tries to reach and get it. Frank actually
throw it again?
Yeah, I would throw it again. That still seems to be the only pitch he can get over. Not only that, Frank likes the ball out over the plate anyway. Not that far out, but he likes it out over the plate rather than inside.
Durham and Martinez, the base runners. Nobody out. On the hands and a pop-up. Man, he got him on just a half swing, and Frank Thomas, in such terrible frustration, slams his bat down and breaks it in half.
That was a great call there by the catcher, Sandy Alomar Jr. They'd been away the entire at bat, and then they came inside. And you could see that he set up inside and got him out.
Well, that was quite a pitch.
Well, you said it was a big pitch, and it really was.
So now here is Albert Bell with a chance to do some serious damage. It is 1-1 in the third. 2 on, 1 out. Ooh, look at that. Fastball for a strike. Came right after him. There's some pretty clever banners that have been prepared here tonight. 0-2 came to the inside after getting strike one on the outside. Now he's ahead of Albert. 0-2.
That was that good sinker that we talked about. That's the pitch he threw to Frank Thomas to get him out. That ball really runs down and in on the right-handed hitter, and you just can't get to it.
Durham at second. Martinez at first. And he fought that one off. That breaking ball away. Maybe not as far away as he would have liked.
Well, not with the count 0-2. You need to get that ball farther away, just because with two things would happen. If you get that ball farther away, even if it's a ball, you let him think that, well, I'm setting him up to come back inside. You try to get the hitter to think along with you, and then you do the opposite.
Fastball away. Driven deep, but very much fouled on the right field line.
But he's still accomplishing what he wants because he's got Albert Bell in a defensive mode. Albert Bell, that's a defensive swing. That is not, you know, Albert Bell trying to drive the ball.
Well, now the Cleveland fans with a loud response in support of Jared Wright. Broken back. Could be 2. Vizquel gets 1 to first.
Well, we're going to see Jared Wright's great pitches here to Frank Thomas and Albert Bell that gets him out of the jam. The first pitch to Frank Thomas, this is a great pitch. Look at that. And it, because it was preceded by other great pitches. This one is not as good, but he had also set him up so that he was very vulnerable inside, and that's where the pitch was. Wasn't as good a pitch as he made to Thomas, but still very effective. A good sinker, and he gets the ground ball double play.
Pretty good maturity and poise there for the 21-year-old. Here's Omar Vizquel, still 1-1. I mean, he had 2 men on, 2 of the greatest sluggers in the game up, and he had fallen behind Frank Thomas 2-0. And then came back to get out of it beautifully, incredibly. Robin Ventura in third base side. Near the dugout, and Vizquel is out number 1 here in the third. Now there's the 21-year-old Jared Wright and the professor, Bulldog, Oral Hershiser. And Oral with that nickname Bulldog could certainly appreciate what Jarrett Wright just did.
And even before we got on him, they were talking, and Hershiser, I know, is passing on a lot of wisdom to the young kid, and there's nothing better for any pitcher or a hitter to be around a veteran who's had success in the major leagues and can pass along some of their secrets to you as a rookie.
Here is Bip Roberts, who was hit by a pitch his first time and scored the Cleveland run after stealing a base. By the way, with 2 men on and nobody out of that inning, Jarrett Wright retired 2 hitters who have between them picked up 211 RBIs this year. There's the fluid movement of Ozzie Guillen. He's been doing that for a long time. Roberts retired, 2 down. Guillen, though, wondering what his future is now. White Sox seem to be going for more young players now. His contract is coming up. They don't seem to have anybody currently ready to move in to take over shortstop, but they've been making trades for some young shortstops. The big deal they made with the Giants got them a young, highly touted shortstop named Mike Caruso. So Guillen says he wants to be with the White Sox next year, but he doesn't know if they want him.
Well, there also comes a time when, as you get up in age and your contract is pretty big, you know, they figure that you're indispensable. So that's another thing that he's going to have to look at, whether he'll take less money to play there than he made this year, and see what happens.
Brian Giles, the hitter, speaking of a young player. I mean, this guy, every time somebody talks trade with Cleveland, they say, yeah, we'd like to make that deal. We want Brian Giles. I mean, this guy got tremendous power. Looks like he got a chance to be an outstanding hitter.
A lot of people may have forgotten, but, you know, Mike Hargrove was a pretty good hitter himself. And he says the only problem that Giles has is that he'll chase that high fastball every once in a while. And the problem is every once in a while he'll catch up with it and hit it out of the ballpark, so he thinks he can do it all the time. And he makes a lot of outs on that pitch. So he's trying to get him to be a little more disciplined. Like most left-handed hitters, they prefer the ball down. You know, and he likes the ball down. He hits the ball better down, but he will swing at the high one a lot of times.
He had a 307 lifetime minor league average. He hit 355 in 121 at-bats in the big leagues last year for Cleveland. Just a bit low from Draybeck. 3-2 the count. Doc Draybeck, by the way, rolling right along, had an easy second inning. Got the first 2 hitters of this inning very easily. It's a 1-1 game, 2 down. Manny Ramirez would be next. He earned him on 3-2. Foul ball, still 3-2.
Draybeck has a variety of breaking pitches. That was that 3-quarter, like a slurve, not really a curveball, because a curveball is tougher to throw for a strike. And he wanted to throw something hard enough that the hitter might commit to swing at a bad pitch, which he did. So that was in between a curve and a slider, kind of a slurve.
Charging hard is Durham, and he makes a beautiful play. Cleveland has gone in order again. That's 9 in a row retired by Draybeck. Robin Ventura will be coming up. It is 1-1. ESPN Sunday Night Baseball. I'm John Miller with Joe Morgan. Jacobs Field in Cleveland. Our 8th season of Sunday Night Baseball. Next Sunday we'll be in Baltimore. The Yankees and the Orioles at 8 Eastern. Robin Ventura doubled his first time against Jarrett Wright and scored the White Sox only run up till now. So here he comes again with Cameron behind him, and then Fabregas against Jarrett Wright. Williams starts over, as does Vizquel, the left fielder Giles, but there's no play on the ball.
You know, if we believe the radar gun, which, you know, the one thing that's making him more effective, John, is his fastballs are all the different speeds. He's thrown with 94, 90, 89, 87. He's, you know, and that helps you. I mean, they're all at different speeds. See, that one was 88 right there. So the point is, not any 2 pitches are just alike.
That's kind of the way his dad pitched, right?
Well, it's what you'd like to do that. I mean, the only guy I can think of would be Greg Maddux. It's like that. I mean, each pitch is a little different than the one before, even if they're 2 fastballs.
It's behind Ventura here, 3-1. That's gone if it's fair. Down the right field line, it is fair by plenty. And gone by plenty. Wow, what a shot. Ventura had gone 83 consecutive at-bats without a home run. And he hits his 4th homer of the year in his 127th at-bat. There is no doubt about that one.
What you see is that he has more trouble with left-handed hitters than he does right-handed hitters. Now, this pitch here is going to be about belt tie and middle of the plate in, not exactly where he wants it. See right there, belt tie, middle of the plate in, and he launches it. Belt tie, middle of the plate. You can put it on a tee if you could. That's where you would put it, right there.
And the breaking ball for a strike to Cameron. Cameron grounded out his first time, but it was an important ground out. It helped set up a run for the White Sox. Ventura had doubled, and then Cameron got him to third with an infield out. That was the reason, actually, that they got their first run on a fly ball. 2-1, the White Sox are ahead. And he dispatched Cameron in a hurry.
And that's some high cheese right there. There's Ron Jackson. He is the hitting instructor now. You know, he took over for Bill Buckner, but he wanted me to say hello to his brother, Demetrius Jackson. He's at the Cooper Green Hospital in Birmingham, Alabama, recuperating, and we want to send all of our best wishes out to Demetrius as well.
George Fabregas, ball one. He hit the sacrifice fly. Giles in left that brought Ventura home back in the second. 2-1, White Sox leading now in the fourth inning. They try to salvage a game out of this series. He went around with it. 1 ball, 1 strike. Jim Evans, the plate umpire, made the ruling.
And John, I want to finish my point I was making about Bill Buckner. You know, he's no longer here. And I said that, you know, now it seems that Durham is swinging a little better. That does not reflect on Bill Buckner. The point I was making is sometimes two people, you know, gel better than another couple would.
That's a base hit to left center. And Grissom is over to pick it up. Well, hold that thought, Joe, because now we've got an update from Bill Pito.
I'll hold it.
All right, John, MCI takes us to Minnesota. The Mariners and Twins. Ken Griffey Jr. against Bob Tewksbury, his 50th home run of the year. Twins won at 9-6, but with 19 games left, Griffey Jr. needs just 12 more homers for the record.
So Griffey becomes the 15th man to reach 50 home runs in a season. This ball by Ordonez to short. Still gets one. Vic Roberts to first, not in time.
That was a tough turn right there because Vizquel had to back up and wait for the big hop. He didn't charge it and get it on the short hop and get it to him quickly enough. Now watch, see, he waits for it. Now he gives him a little unorthodox throw. Bipp actually turned that ball very well. He turned the play really well. He got rid of the ball quickly. Now watch, he gets rid of it quickly and everything. He just does not have enough on it to get the double play.
And remember, Bipp never played a game at second base all year long in Kansas City. Never played second until traded here to Cleveland. Ozzie Guillen, and he fouls one off to the left.
Let me finish
back to the pitcher's first time.
Story real quick. My point I was making is I had a lot of hitting instructors myself, and Ted Kluszewski and I gel better than anybody else. And my point is, you know, a lot of times you just find the right combination and it works. It does not mean the other hitting instructors or anyone else were not capable of doing their job. It just means that sometimes two people's personality works better than two other people. Now we can go back to Bill Pito.
Well, he doesn't have anything for us now.
Oh, okay.
Ordonez was running, but Guillen is easily out. 2-1 Chicago. Ramirez, Tomey, and David Justice coming up. Sunday night baseball. White Sox 2, Cleveland 1. We go to the last of the fourth. Coming up tomorrow at 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific. Join Mike Tirico, Sterling Sharp, and Joe Theismann for NFL Prime Monday. Then at 9 Eastern, turn to ABC Sports for Monday Night Football. Marcus Allen leads the Kansas City Chiefs up against Jeff George and the Oakland Raiders. That's the Chiefs and the Silver and Black tomorrow at 9 Eastern on ABC Sports. With Al and the Giffer and Dan Deardorff.
And Chris.
And that's right, and the Boomer.
Yeah, and I'll be there as well.
You're going to Monday Night Football?
Yeah, I'm going to Monday Night Football.
Man, if it's happening in store, Joe gets in his car and he drives.
I'll drive right on over there.
We're calling it the Morgan Cruiser. Down the third base line, Ventura, long throw here. Nice play to retire Ramirez.
You know, the thing that made that a nice play is after he caught the ball, he took his time, but then he got rid of the ball quickly. Snap. Now watch, he doesn't wind up to make this throw. Watch, he catches the ball, sets himself. Look at that. And a quick release gets it over there. He does not take a long time to wind up.
Now the cleanup man, Jim Thome. Well, Robin Ventura helps this ball club several ways, and one of the ways is his strong defense at third base. Jim Thome against Doug Drabek, who has retired 10 in a row since Giles singled home Roberts in the first inning. Thome grounded out to the first baseman. His first time. 2-0 after Thome, then Justice, another left-handed batting slugger, and then Matt Williams. Are into the power, the formidable power of the Cleveland Indians. They have hit 195 home runs this year in 137 games. Curveball. That one has a chance. That one is up and into the bleachers. It's tied up.
John, there are a lot of veteran pitchers who will throw you 2-0. They think you're looking dead red for a fastball. They'll throw you a little breaking ball. It's not really their best curveball. They're just trying to throw it for a strike. And that's what Drabek does here. This is not his big breaking curveball or the sharp one that he throws. He's just trying to throw it for a strike because he thinks Thome's looking for a fastball. And you'll see Thome kind of wait on it, see that it's hanging there, and then just attack it.
Here's Justice. He's got 30 homers in the dirt with a breaking ball. 1 ball and no strikes.
You'll see Hershiser do that a lot of times, throw a little spinning breaking ball 2-0 because the hitter is sitting on a fastball. And if the hitter is sitting on a fastball, he sees it spin, normally he will go ahead and take it. But Thome recognized it right away and really went after it.
The high one puck foul and over our heads into the upper deck.
Let's take a look at this pitch. Take a look at this pitch to Thome. Now watch, you'll see. See, it's just a little spinning breaking ball. That's not his big curveball. And Thome saw it and jumped all over it.
The hit man, Mike usually used to say, see it, read it, and explode.
Exactly. Hey, man, you remember that, huh? Hey. There it is right there. I mean, see, he wasn't looking for the breaking ball. He was looking for a fastball, but he recognized it right away. And he exploded.
And fastball in there for a strike.
You see a lot of veteran pitchers, John, you know, they'll throw what they call a dead fish fastball, or they'll take a little something off. They won't throw you a fastball 2-0 to a slugger. They'll try to do something just to change his, to keep him off balance. And it works in most cases, but in this case, obviously it didn't work.
You mean because it landed in the bleachers?
Yeah.
2-2 count. Just a bit low. 3-2 now. Well, there, Justice could well have been thinking breaking ball on 2-2, and he got the fastball, but out of the strike zone.
I'm sure somewhere in Drabek's mind, he's saying, I should have just thrown him the good fastball to try to tail it away.
Matt Williams on deck. 3-2 to Justice. A smash foul on the right field line. Man, did he crush that one. Well, the long ball. That's what they love here at Jacobs Field.
This place is built for that.
And they are close to becoming the first team in Major League history to hit 200 homers or more in a season in 3 consecutive years. Tough pitch. Guillen from center field throws him out.
Nice play. We're going to try to show you what I was talking about with Thome. Now watch, he's looking for a fastball that he can pull. Watch, his hips will open up, but he keeps his hands and his bat back. Now watch his hips go. And that's why he was able to hit this ball. He's looking for a fastball he can pull, but see, he keeps his hands back and his hips back, and then he just rips it to left field. That's when you're a real power hitter. You don't have to try to pull the ball. I mean, he didn't try to pull it.
Well, Thome's got 37 homers this year. in 427 at bats. Matt Williams. That'll go back out of play. And it is 0-1. Williams flied out deep to left center his first time. Back to that big wall out at left center where they have the out-of-town scores posted. It's about maybe half the height of the famous wall at Fenway Park.
Yeah, and you can see that he has not hit Draybeck well, and of course that includes their National League confrontations. And Draybeck has been able to keep him off balance. Breaking ball first time up, good fastball up and in right there.
Strike 2 on the outside. Yeah, both Justice and Williams have been battling with Draybeck for years. 0-2 the count. 2 down, nobody on. It's a 2-2 game now. Tomey's homer having tied the score. Little slider outside. Matt Williams has had at least 1 hit, and very often more than that, in each of the last 22 games. Ironically, of his 31 homers, he's only hit 7 in this ballpark, including the 2 he hit here yesterday. There's that curve blowing outside. 2 balls, 2 strikes.
Well, that is ironic, John, in that normally you should feel a little more comfortable in your home setting than you do on the road. But obviously a lot of other things get involved in that. And there you see he's hit better average-wise at home with more power on the road.
Well, I guess he used to feel awfully comfortable at his own ballpark, his old park in San Francisco. Taking him a while to get comfortable here. 3-2.
But you see, this is the difference in Matt Williams right now with this 22-game hitting streak. When we saw him earlier in the year, he would have swung at one of those 3 pitches when he was behind in the count. You know, he would have committed early and swung at a bad pitch. Now he's seeing the ball better, and he's waiting, and that's how you get into a hitting streak. I mean, you start to see the ball better, and you wait, and you get a good pitch to hit.
3-2. Just missing inside. He threw the curveball and didn't miss by much. Now Sandy Alomar will come over from the on-deck circle and try and turn that into something. Alomar had a 30-game hitting streak earlier this year. Pretty good for a catcher.
You're right.
And Matt Williams with the 22-game streak going.
And of course, Sandy, most valuable player in the All-Star game this year, hit the home run and won it for the American League.
Right here in this ballpark against the Giants' Sean Estes. That's a foul. 0-1 the count. And Sandy was so hot. And you see the longest hitting streaks in this decade. The 2 longest have both occurred this year. Nomar Garcia-Parra, whom we saw last week, had his ended by the Atlanta Braves. Had his ended by a National League team.
Good question. Was his American League streak still alive?
1-1 to Alomar. That's a called strike on the outside. That's an interesting topic, though. I mean,
yeah. Mark McGwire's home runs in the American League stayed over there.
Well, he hit number 48. I mean, I don't think that he should be able to lead the National League in homers because he hit so many over them. But his numbers should carry over. Let's be able to read his numbers in the statistics and in the box scores. It shows 14 homers. That's ridiculous. He got 48. That was in under the hands. Long run. McCameron gets there. Alomar retired. Cleveland ties it on the Tomey homer after Ventura had homered in the first half of the inning for the White Sox. Durham, Martinez, and then Frank Thomas. Sunday night baseball. It's 2-2. White Sox and the Indians as we go to the 5th inning. A big Wednesday night baseball doubleheader coming up. 7:30 Eastern. It's the Yankees and their ancient rivals, the Boston Red Sox from Fenway. Tino Martinez, Derek Jeter, and Big Mo will try and put the hurt to the Yanks at 7:30 Eastern. Then the Braves go to Dodger Stadium. Chipper Jones, Andrew Jones, Mike Piazza having an MVP type season for LA. The Wednesday night baseball doubleheader starting at 7:30 Eastern with game 1, 4:30 Pacific. Don't miss it. Joe, you going to drive down to one of those games?
I was just thinking after the football game tomorrow, I think I'll start driving down to LA. I think I'll go to that game Wednesday night.
Man,
think I'll do that.
I had a feeling. I mean, the Braves and Dodgers.
Yeah, I can't miss that.
Could be a postseason preview right there. Now the top of the order for the White Sox. 5th inning, Jarrett Wright, the rookie, in a 2-2 tie. Ray Durham, who has grounded out and singled and stolen a base against him. 2-0. Dave Martinez will follow, and then Frank Thomas. 2 runs and 5 hits for the White Sox. 2 runs and 2 hits for Cleveland. That's a foul out of play. I wanted to bring something up on a very serious note. We were very saddened to learn this morning of the death of one of our favorite colleagues, the longtime voice of the Texas Rangers, Mark Holtz, who passed away tragically early this morning. We send along all of our deepest sympathies to his wife Alice and his daughter. Mark Holtz was one of the outstanding voices of the game, and he'll be missed terribly in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex and by Rangers fans and baseball fans through the great Southwest. Mark Holtz, who died earlier today. Carrying very well out into left center field, but Marquise Grissom, still one of the best. He was able to track it down, and that flag, Joe, blowing in from right field. I'm wondering if a ball to left field is getting a little assistance right now, the way that one carried.
The way that carried, I would have to say it is getting some assistance that way, because it looked like that was just a routine fly ball, and Marquise Grissom had to get on his horse a little bit and get back there.
Thank goodness there was a horse out there for him. 1 out, and here is Dave Martinez. Grounded out and walked. Ball 1. Well, the Baltimore Orioles come in here tomorrow night. So there's another interesting matchup with 2 ball clubs who right now figure to be in the postseason. We know the Orioles are going to go. Best record in baseball. And Cleveland starting to lengthen its advantage now over Milwaukee and also the White Sox. They've got 7 games up on Milwaukee, the second place team, in the loss column. Milwaukee's only got 21 games to go. Puts them in the category of extreme long shot now.
Well, the only positive, if you're a Milwaukee fan, is that Cleveland does have all those double headers. You know, you can't make up in the loss column. You know, if you're Milwaukee, you have to have that help.
He spins one in there for a strike. 2-2 now to Martinez. One thing also, the White Sox, after tonight, they've got 4 games with Cleveland next weekend at Comiskey Park. With a win tonight, get to within 6, get a little help from Baltimore. They have a chance on their home ballpark to do some damage. That's a base hit for Dave Martinez. On the other hand, Joe, I mean, you say that on the one hand, and yet the White Sox themselves, in terms of the front office, don't believe that they can do it. And they've made trades and gone the other way in terms of their planning for the future. They've already written off this season and said, hey, next year's the year.
Well, I think the thing that saves them in that capacity, John, is that they have some veteran players. And these guys want to play. They play hard here, you know, like Frank Thomas and these guys. They don't care what someone else says. They're going to go out and do their thing. I mean, they're still out there thinking that they can win. In fact, I talked to Frank before the ball game, and to all these guys, they think they can win. And Frank says, yesterday was a very key game, and they were ahead. And he said Cleveland bats just came alive on them yesterday.
Ball to strike in the outside. I mean, Cleveland in the first 2 games of this series, which really were the White Sox hoped to stay in the race, to do some damage here. But Cleveland scored 20 runs in the first 2 games here. Quickly, Thomas behind in the count, 0-2. Wright has really worked him strongly tonight.
Well, John, that last pitch that he checked swing and popped up in his last at bat, that really opened up the outside corner, because Frank, you don't ever forget when a guy jams you. From the hitter's point of view, you want to make sure he doesn't have a chance to do it again. So that really opens up the outside, and that's where he's gone with these first 2 pitches.
Going there again. This is a double play ball. Vizquel steps on second 1. Albert Bell left on deck. 2-2. Marquise Grissom coming up when we get back. White Sox 2, Cleveland 2. We go to the last of the 5th.
John, I want to take a look at this. This shows you how Vizquel plays. He just kind of casually, he has so much confidence in himself. But right there, Dave Martinez just kind of avoids the collision. He didn't slide. I don't know if you're supposed to let, I do know you're not supposed to let that happen. I mean, if a guy
go in there and try to
break up the double play, if he comes towards you like that, you're supposed to slide and make him do something different. But that was just kind of a routine double play made by Vizquel.
It's not the way it should happen ever, number one. But number two, it should not happen if you're a club feeling like you're in a pennant race.
Or trying to catch the team that's in front of you.
1 ball, 1 strike to Marquise Grissom.
Heck, I'd still be playing if they weren't going to break up double plays. Hey, I could still kind of jog over there in turn 2 if they weren't going to get me.
2-1 the count. And Draybeck misses. 3-1. Vizquel is on deck, and then Bip Roberts, the leadoff man. Well, Marquise Grissom has seen Draybeck, and I'm sure he was not pleased to find out that, having been traded to the American League, that Draybeck was now over here too. Out of play. 3-2 the count. Well, if you're a White Sox fan, it had to be a little disheartening to see that. I mean, Vizquel may have turned the double play anyway. I mean, he finds a way to get it done.
He's going to get it done, but make him do it.
Yeah.
You know, you just put pressure on him. I mean, look, that's the way you're supposed to play.
Maybe he won't get it done.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw earlier Bip Roberts.
Right, under pressure.
Yeah. And we saw Ozzie Guillen get a lot of pressure from Brian Giles. And he did not get the double play. Right center field. And Ordonez takes it. Grissom is retired. Bip Roberts now the leadoff man for the Indians. And we asked manager Hargrove about the addition of Bip Roberts, what it means to the ball club.
For me, the 2 most important spots in the lineup, in the offensive lineup, are the number 1 hitter and number 4 hitter. If you got those 2 people, then you can fill in around and get people to do those jobs. But if you take a guy and take him out of a spot and try to make him a leadoff hitter, it disrupts the whole lineup, and that's really pretty much what we've been looking at all year long. When we got Bip over here, we got him over here because of his bat and his ability to lead off. We got him over here also because of his speed and his ability to run the bases.
So far, so good. That's done the job they'd hoped. Tonight, especially, he got hit by a pitch and immediately stole second, and that's how they got their first run. They were able to bring him in from second base.
Well, he's a very good player. I mean, Bip has hit 300 in the big leagues. I mean, he's a good player.
Ron Vizquel striking the inside. Of course, the Indians had one of the best leadoff hitters in the game, the dynamic Kenny Lofton, but they were afraid that they would lose him at the end of the season, get nothing for him, as happened with Albert Bell. You know that story. Ended up making a big trade with the Atlanta Braves. They seem to turn out fairly well for Cleveland, though, nonetheless. I mean, Marquise Grissom, great center fielder, and David Justice having a real big year for them. They got both of them in their Lofton trade. And down on strikes goes Vizquel. But then Grissom did not give them what they'd hoped as a leadoff man. Bip Roberts talking about what he did in the first inning after he was hit by a pitch.
Well, you can see he got a great jump, steals the base easily, and scores on a base hit by Brian Giles and put the team ahead 1-0. And anytime you can score first, and especially in that first inning, it really always gets your team's adrenaline flowing.
And that's what Lofton did for them.
Yeah.
So very well. Ironically, Lofton was doing many of those same things for Atlanta. But now he's had a lot of injury problems over there. And it's not the same in terms of the great base-stealing threat that he was here.
Well, I think part of the problem, even before he was injured, John, he was having troubles adjusting back to the National League. He came from the National League from the Houston Astros years ago, but he was having trouble adjusting to, you know, the pitches. He was not having a good year.
They seem to defend him and his stolen base capabilities much better than they had in this league.
Right.
And he was just not able to to steal the bases almost at will as he had been over here. 2-1 the count to Vip Roberts. And Draybeck misses. 3-1. Brian Giles, a powerful left-handed hitter, is on deck. So Vip may well see a pitch to hit right here. Of course, he hit one out of the ballpark here on Friday. 2-2 in the 5th inning. 2 down and nobody out. And that's ball 4. Well, hard to figure that one. Now you got to face a guy who could hurt him. I mean, Vip Roberts hits base hits and doubles and whatnot. Only has 2 home runs all year.
Well, it does 2 things. It's going to take a little bit of Draybeck's concentration away from Giles, too, because he has to worry a little bit about Vip Roberts at first base. That's how your speed helps you even if you do not steal a base. He's going to be thinking a little bit about Roberts, so he can't give 100% concentration to the hitter. Plus, he's going to have to throw a few more fastballs to Giles to keep him from stealing.
Vip's got a big lead over there. I want him to go quickly here, Joe. That was kind of a semi-pitch out right there, by the way.
But he's going to have to throw hard stuff. He may not have to throw all fastballs, but it have to be a slider. You're not going to see a slow curve or a changeup. And that's what you have to think if you're the hitter. So I'm going to get something hard. It's going to be a fastball or a slider.
Big hole on the right side of the infield with Martinez on the bag. Vip had to dive back in. Number Maury Wills used to say that if you don't have to dive back in when the pitcher makes his best move, you don't have a long enough lead.
And that goes for base stealers. I don't like to see some of your other ones out there, but you're right. If you can get back easily, then you do not have a big enough lead. You're supposed to have to dive back if you're a base stealer.
They pitch out.
Now where are you? Now it's 2-0. So see, that's what a base stealer does for you. He hasn't stolen the base yet, but he's helped the hitter behind him. Now he has a 2-0 pitch coming, and the hitter can sit there and say, I'm going to look dead red. I'm going to look for a fastball. And if he throws anything else, I'll take it.
And that was Davey Nelson, the first base coach, whispering to Vip Roberts. Davey was an excellent base stealer in his own right as a player. Well, now it is 3-0.
So he's going to get second base without stealing it almost, probably. So I think most people always look at the stolen bases to determine whether a guy's a good base stealer or not. That's not always true. He helps your team in a lot of different ways.
But sometimes just a threat is enough. 3-0. Going to ease that one through there. 3 balls and 1 strike now. Well, he's got to be running now.
Everything's perfect. Everything is perfect. You take off now. You know he can't pitch out, so you take off. And that's what Giles is supposed to sit for a fastball or something middle of the plate that he can drive. If it's not, take it and then drive him in from second base.
Ramirez on deck. Get back in standing that time. Almost as if he knew that throw was coming.
He had started back a little soon, but I think you're right. I think this is a situation that he has to go in.
3-1 to Giles. 2-2 the score. We've got 2 down in the 5th inning. Draybeck made a mistake in this inning, walking Vip Roberts. Not that Vip is not capable of throwing walk, but now he's in some trouble. Roberts is not running, but it is ball 4 to Brian Giles.
And as you mentioned, the first pitch was a semi-pitch out. Second pitch was a complete pitch out. So now he's behind 2-0, and he knows Giles can hit the ball out of the ballpark, so he tried to make good pitches, wasn't able to do it. So now you have a man at second base. And let's take a quick look at those pitches. You know, this is the first pitch, as you said, kind of a semi-pitch out. Here is a straight pitch out, 3-0. And now he thinks he's going. He comes inside, and automatically the man's at second base.
2 men on. 2 men out, and the dangerous Manny Ramirez. 24 home runs for the year. Ramirez, only 25 years of age, and actually grew up really in New York, born in the Dominican Republic. Base hit to left field. Roberts speeding around third. He'll score easily. Giles stops at second. And Vip Roberts producing in that leadoff role tonight. That's the second run he scored. 3-2 Cleveland.
And you can attribute both of those runs directly to him being the leadoff hitter for this ball club. And you can see how they're giving him a big high five and coming in. They appreciate that. What Drabek doesn't want to fall behind again, so he tries to sneak a fastball on the inside corner to Ramirez. And Ramirez gets the bat out there, rips it in the hole. You're not going to ever throw Bip Roberts out with 2 outs and a base hit to the outfield, because with 2 outs, he's going on contact, and he runs well, and he gets the job done.
Pitching coach Mike Pasick to the mound. Bip Roberts with big dividends for his new ball club. This is his 5th game with Cleveland, and he's already scored 6 runs. I mean, he gets on base, and they got plenty of guys who know how to get him home. Roberts has only 4 hits in 16 at-bats for Cleveland. 4 for 16, and yet he scored 6 runs.
Well, like I say, you got to throw the walks in there, and they hit by pitches. All that counts, because his job is to get on base, and he's been doing that.
Now Jim Thome, who has really blasted the White Sox this year. You saw those numbers. This is only the 8th game of the year between the clubs, and he's got 5 home runs against them, including his 4th inning home run tonight. 2 men out. 2 men out. The bullpen is busy for the White Sox. Strike on the outside. In the bullpen, young right-hander Keith Folt, who came in the Alvarez-Hernandez-Darwin trade from the San Francisco Giants. Giles up there at second base. Ramirez over at first base. His RBI has put Cleveland back ahead, 3-2. And time was granted.
Yeah, that's a little unusual there, to stop it when he's on his way to the plate. That's a little unusual, but I guess he requested it in time. And for all the kids out there, remember that you only request timeout. The umpire can't just call timeout and step out.
John Adams, he did in the old ballpark, beating the drum.
A great pitch, John. Not that it was a strike, but it was a great pitch, because the first pitch was a low fastball sinking away. That was a changeup with the same motion. And watch the motion. Well, the motion is the same as it was on the fastball, and the pitch was just down a little bit.
Thome's one of those guys.
Yeah.
And he doesn't swing at everything. 108 walks.
He has a 428 on base average.
There's not much foul ground in this park. And that saves Thome. Ventura went as far as he could go and then some. 1 ball and 2 strikes. Cal Ripken had an episode with a camera well like that at Yankee Stadium earlier this year. Got all cut up. Had to have some stitches.
But he didn't miss a game.
No, he didn't.
Here's Ventura. He goes over as far as he can. Now watch, this is going to be close. I mean, this ball is just barely out of his reach right there. We lost it, but it was, take my word for it, it's like a foot out of his reach, and he gave a great effort there.
That's from our foul ball cam. 1 ball and 2 strikes to Thome. David Justice on deck. 2 men on, 2 men out. 2-2. And you got Jim Thome with 37 homers up there. Big spot with Giles at second. And Ramirez at first. Thome is 3rd in the league in home runs. Griffey's got 50. Tino Martinez 41. And then there's Thome, 37 big flies.
John, and it's just hard to pitch through this lineup. I mean, you're under stress from the first inning on when you're pitching to this Cleveland Indians lineup.
Struck him out. And that's pretty much the way he started him, with that same low fastball away. Albert Bell, Robin Ventura coming up. 3-2 Cleveland. The ESPN Sunday Night Baseball Game of the Week is brought to you by Visa. It's everywhere you want to be. And by the Home Depot, America's home improvement coach. And you hear the crowd welcoming Albert Bell. outfielder said, attempting not to make him feel welcome back here in Cleveland. Albert is hit into a force play and grounded into a double play tonight. And that's back out of play. 0-1 the count.
Trying to show you how effective Jarrett Wright has been. Against the right-handers, they are 1 for 8 in this ball game. The left-handers are 5 for 10. And I mentioned that he doesn't seem as comfortable with the left-handers because he can't run that ball away like he can run it in on the right-handers.
On the outside, 0-2. Well, he's really been incredible against Frank Thomas and Albert Bell. Thomas has fouled out on a check swing and hit a double play. And Bell has hit a force out and hit a double play.
But, John, all that was caused by one pitch, that sinking fastball inside, because every hitter protects against being jammed.
1-2.
So that opens up the outside, and you see he has not come back inside to either Frank Thomas or Albert Bell. But he put in their mind that he can come in there, and they know he will. And so you protect against it, and it opens up the outside. It gets you, you might chase some pitches away, and you may not be able to handle anything away.
Deep to third. Nice pickup by Matt Williams.
And just as soon as I say that he's opened up the outside, he throws that good sinker down and in again. And again, Albert was protecting against it like Frank Thomas. And he's not able to get to it. It's just such a good pitch. Watch this pitch. It's going to sink down and in. See your target down and watch it sink in right in there. Nothing you can do with that pitch except what Albert Bell did with it, and that's hit a ground ball to the left side.
On the other side of things, the left-handed batting, Robin Ventura has a double into the right field corner and a booming home run on the right field line.
And John, when you watch, you'll see that there's not nearly the movement on his fastball to left-handers as it is right-handers. I don't know if it's the angle at which he throws or the target he sets up with, but the ball does not run away from the left-hander like it runs into the right-hander.
2-1. Meanwhile, the Cleveland bullpen is busy. The Cleveland bullpen, which has become a real source of strength for the club here in the second half of the year. Wright is facing a lefty right now. That is strike 2 call. Throwing all breaking balls here. There's Plunk, the right-hander, on the left, and Hakimi, the left-hander, on the right in the Cleveland bullpen. Three and 2. Did you catch all that?
Yeah, I got it.
It's one of those left-right things. I was playing the percentages.
I got you.
Playing the old lefty-righty percentage, Joe. That's all. Broadcasters play that game too. 3-2 the count. Ventura now hitting .307 for the year.
Another breaking ball.
Well, he saw what Ventura could do with a fastball. I think he's pretty well convinced what Ventura can do on that.
Well, he has one more pitch that I think is a better pitch than even that breaking ball right there. He's got a straight changeup. He hasn't thrown it very often tonight, but it's a very good pitch that he has.
Another breaking ball and the walk.
Well, I guess he figured Cameron is up next.
And he owns those right-handers.
Yeah, he's right-handed, so why take a chance with the left-hander?
The only right-hander to get a hit against him tonight is the rookie Maglio Ordonez. Mike Cameron has grounded to second, and he is struck out. 3-2. Cleveland is leading. Cleveland threatening to sweep this series for the White Sox. Off of home plate. Dip Roberts at second. The tag. Well, and Ventura broke up the double play, and Bip Roberts is down. Well, Cleveland fans remember all too well when Albert Bell knocked around Fernando Vina in a spot much like that last year in Milwaukee, and Albert got a very harsh suspension for that.
You're right, and I don't think he should have. I think the play Albert made was clean. The first thing you have to do as a second baseman, I mean, you have to realize this guy's not going to let you run up to him and tag him. I mean, you're fair game if you step into the baseline. And I'm speaking from experience. I've been knocked around by bigger guys than Marvin Ventura until I learned to be a matador. But I mean, I saw this coming, and Ventura kind of set it up because he stopped and kind of backed up, and then, you know, he ran into him. And I mean, he's not supposed to let him complete the double play. You're not supposed to let him tag him and complete the double play. I mean, that's just the way the game is supposed to be played. And I also mentioned earlier when we saw Martinez not do what he's supposed to do. Now watch Bipp. Now right here he's supposed to tag him, but he runs right at him. Now Robin has no recourse but to run into him. I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to stand there and let him tag you and throw to first base? No, that's not the way to do it. Robin runs right into it with a clean. He does not throw his elbow or anything. I mean, I know it's made seem harsh, but that's the way the game is supposed to be played. You're not supposed to let somebody tag you and make a double play. That's the first thing a first baseman tells you. Don't let him tag you and complete the double play.
So now if you're Bipp,
yeah,
do you, having frozen him, just go ahead and throw to first and then you come back and get him?
In that case, Robin was too far up to try to do it the other way. I think he had to tag him, but you can't just run straight at him. I mean, you've got to be off to the side. You don't have to tag him straight on. You can just run and tag him with your glove as you go by, and then, you know, throw. I just hate to see this because it seems like he hurt his ankle or something, or maybe even his knee.
Jim Moorfield, the trainer. On the right, Mike Hargrove, the manager. Bipp is walking off under his own power, but obviously, as they say in the clubhouse, Joe, he ain't right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not laughing at that. I just think that, look, you know, there's certain plays in this game. That's why it's tough to be a second baseman sometimes. I mean, when you go to second base to make the double play, you got a guy bearing down on you trying to break in half. If you run in the line like that, they're going to try to run over you. I mean, that's just the way the game is played. That's one of the hazards of the job.
And one other point, last year when Albert Bell had the run-in with Vigna and then subsequently got suspended, as was the case tonight, the umpires there did not eject Albert Bell from the game. They did not even rule a double play that he'd done anything illegal at all.
Look, John, both of the infielders got hurt, and I feel bad for that, but both of the runners were doing what they were supposed to do. You're not supposed to let the guy tag you. You know, and like I said, I'm speaking from experience. I grabbed the ball once and tried to look for Gary Carter, and I didn't have to look for it. When I turned, he ran over me. And, I mean, you see Bipp's actually running towards Ventura, and Ventura stops, and then he just runs into him. I mean, that's basically what you're supposed to do.
Well, maybe he thought that Ventura went to the Dave Martinez School of Base Running.
Yeah, maybe so.
So Ventura is out. Cameron reaching on the fielder's choice. Tony Fernandez, the veteran, is now going in to play second base. Fernandez replacing Biff Roberts at second. As soon as we get a report as to Bipp's physical status, we'll pass it along to you. I mean, obviously you've seen tonight his value to this ball club. The reason they acquired him in a trade. There goes Cameron, and he steals it. That is his 20th steal in 22 attempts.
John, I might point out something else we did early in the show, but Biff Roberts has not been playing second base. And, you know, he could be a little rusty there, you know, as far as making those plays. And you see Cameron had a great jump. And it's a nice throw down there by Sandy Alomar Jr., but no chance.
So now, what Ventura did, breaking up the double play, may net the White Sox a run. Fabregas, the hitter. And if he can get a base hit here, and the lefties have hit well against Jarrett Wright, then Cameron would have a chance to score the tying run. That's what that was all about. That's why
you don't let them make the double play. I mean, and I hope that people don't think that I'm being harsh, but I'm just telling the truth. That's the way the game is supposed to be played. Obviously, I hate to see second baseman injured, especially second baseman from Oakland, but, you know, that's the way the game's played, and, you know, I've seen a lot of guys get run over at second base, and like I say, myself included.
Oakland, the cradle of
second baseman.
Great second base talent.
Jeff Fry, too.
Albert Bell, 0 for 11 in this series now. And he strikes out Fabregas. And the inning is over. 3-2, Cleveland still leading. David Justice then Matt Williams, and finally Sandy Alomar. Big power coming up. White Sox 2. Cleveland coming to bat in the last of the 6 from the Jake here in downtown Cleveland. 43,051 that paid crowd tonight, and that brings the season's total past 3 million. They used to have a hard time getting 1 million in the old ballpark. That's their 202nd consecutive sellout, the longest current streak in the American League. Last night they had a consecutive sellout streak broken in Colorado. Second game of their day-night doubleheader, the makeup game. They only had 44,000. Where was everybody?
Let's take a look at this play. Now stop it right there. Stop it. Now Brooks, Bipp's running directly at him. What he should be doing is going off to the side. And if Robin goes out there to get him, then they would call the double play. But he runs straight at him, and that's the wrong thing to do. I mean, there's nothing else for him to do but to keep you from tagging him and making the double play. If he was off to the side, that, it wouldn't have happened. But again, Bipp has not been playing much second base the last couple of years. He's been an outfielder, and maybe, he's forgotten about that. And it was just a tough time for him to remember.
Well, I'm sure it came all back to him now.
Yeah, to be reminded.
Here's David Justice. Did he swing? An appeal? Yes, Chuck Merriweather. Rules of the swing. Justice has grounded a second, grounded a short against his longtime enemy, Doug Drabek. I mean, these guys go back to those Pirates, Braves, National League Championship Series, those hard-fought series. That's a ball. 1 ball and 2 strikes. Matt Williams is on deck, and then Sandy Alomar Jr. 3-2. Cleveland is leading. Chief Justice doesn't have a hitting streak going like Matt Williams, but he's ridden real hot. And to reach for it. Nice again. On a win. To me, Joe, on that last replay, as you were making your point, and a good point, had Ventura gone out of the baseline, then they could have ruled it a double play.
Yeah, so it's up to Bipp to go towards him and move on the outside so that he can tag him, try to tag him as he goes by and throw to first base. And if he would have gone out there, and if he comes after you, well, then they're going to call him out. They're going to call a double play.
But it also looked to me like Bipp took the ball out of his glove before he made the tag.
Well, he definitely did that.
I don't think he ever tagged him.
Yeah, he took his ball out of his glove. But I think he thought he was going to make contact as he was bringing it back, but Robin came towards him a step sooner.
Matt Williams. Hot fly, shallow right. Ordonez. And Williams is now 0 for 2. And we've got an update from Bill Pito.
All right, John, time for our Home Depot rising stars. The Yankees' Jorge Posada filling in for the injured Joe Girardi. Big day today against Baltimore. Here's a 2-run home run, his third of the year. He went 2 for 4, drove in 3, scored 2 runs. Yanks beat the O's 10-3 for their first win over Baltimore this year, John, in 8 tries.
Wow. And we'll be watching the Orioles and Yankees from Camden Yards next Sunday night at 8 Eastern, 7 Central, and 5 Pacific. Sandy Alomar against Drabek, and there is ball 1. And we'll perhaps see Roberto Alomar. He's not been playing.
Yes.
It's physical problems.
And they have been playing great. I mean, it's amazing that they were able to play as well without him.
That's a foul.
Because they were, I was thinking when, the Yankees made their charge right after the All-Star break without Alomar in there, they may have a chance to close the gap. But they've had good, bench help from Ledesma and Rebele. They've all done a good job. So
it's a very well-balanced ball club with an excellent pitching and maybe the best bullpen in the league, if not all of baseball. 1-2 to Alomar. Like Davey Johnson, I read a quote a couple of weeks ago. He said, with Roberto Alomar in there healthy and Eric Davis, he said they were 2 runs better than everybody. He says without those 2 guys, we're 1 run better than everybody. And it's hard to argue.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Pretty good quote. So if they get both of those guys back for the playoffs, they'll be 2 runs better than everyone else again.
The Orioles are 88 wins, 52 losses with 22 games to go on the schedule. They go 12-10. They win 100 games. That'd be like a slump for them to finish the year 12-10. Down on strikes. Sandy Alomar. So Drabek has pitched well, but he is trailing 3-2 Cleveland as we move to the 7th from the Jays. ESPN Sunday Night Baseball Game of the Week. I'm John Miller with Joe Morgan, your Sunday night telecasters. Cleveland 3, the White Sox 2 as we go to the 7th. Say, friends, now you can play Fantasy Football 97 on the internet. Get all the latest on your favorite players. Log on at ESPN.com. Check it out. Yeah. There's ball one down and into Maglio Ordonez. This guy, kind of an intriguing prospect. He played for 5 years and was kind of an obscure player. They didn't even look at him really as a prospect. And this year, he ended up winning the American Association MVP and Rookie of the Year award. He's from Venezuela. He hit .295 in the Venezuelan Winter League and won the MVP award there too. One of those late bloomers, perhaps. He had 14 homers, 29 doubles, and 90 RBIs in the American Association, and a .329 batting average. And won the batting title down there. Maglio Ordonez. Very high. I guess things just started to click in for him, Joe. Now he's in the big leagues, and he's gotten off to a real fast start. Although 1 for 2 tonight, he has, in the few games he's played, this is his 6th game, he's had 8 hits and 17 at-bats, including 3 home runs already. Pretty big guy, too.
Yeah, he looks like he's strong.
Let's see how he runs. Fernandez. Nice play.
Only a shortstop arm can make a play like that, though. I mean, he was running away from first base and made a good, strong throw. Look at this. I mean, he's running away from first base and whips it over there. That's a shortstop for you.
Wow.
Yeah. Nice play. That's where the arm of a shortstop comes in handy at second base.
He used to be a perennial Gold Glove shortstop with the Toronto Blue Jays.
I still think he's one of the best AstroTurf shortstops ever. You know, I mean, he was great on the AstroTurf. I don't think he was as good on natural turf as he should have been, but he was great on AstroTurf.
Ozzie Guillen has won himself a Gold Glove as well. He played outstanding shortstop for many, many years, but just a fixture in this White Sox lineup. Wouldn't seem like the White Sox without him.
You're right.
And he's come back from a terrible injury of his own that some feared would end his career a few years back.
Yeah.
And he picked right up really where he left off.
I had in my notes, he said he starred in a soap opera back in his native Venezuela. So maybe he's going to be an actor when he retires.
He's an actor right now. That last pitch from Mascan. And you got to get out of there in a hurry, don't you?
Yes, you do.
That was full speed. It gave me a chill down my spine from up here. That's along the left field line for a base hit. Ryan Giles hustling over. And the big turn by Ozzie. He'll have to go back. Perfect throw to second by Giles. I like the way Ozzie played that, Joe. I mean, he ran hard until he saw that Giles had done everything well. Now Mike Hargrove heading out. He's got his bullpen busy again. Jarrett Wright has gotten his ball club into the 7th inning of this game as we see that swing and the base hit by Ozzie Guillen. Alvin Mormon is the left-hander and Eric Plunk is the right-hander. Mormon, the left-hander, on the right, and he gets the call. So Jarrett Wright, the 21-year-old right-hander, pretty impressive here tonight. He leads Jarrett Wright, 6 1/3 innings in a pennant race, and he leaves leading. Pretty strong performance by him. There is Alvin Mormon on to replace him. See Mormon's numbers. One thing he's done well, Joe, when he comes into games, he keeps that first batter usually off base.
Well, obviously that's very important for a reliever.
Jared Wright got quite the ovation when he left. Well earned.
Yes, well earned, because he pitched very, very well. And all you want from a rookie in a pennant race is for him to keep you in the ball game, give you a chance to win. And Wright has done just that. And I can see why Hargrove is so high on him. If he learns to run that exploding sinker away from the left-handers the way he does into the right-handers, I mean, he's going to be awfully tough. You know, right-handers 1 for 8 against him tonight.
Here's Ray Durham, the leadoff man. He'll bat right-handed. Durham is hitting only .225 as a right-handed hitter. Ozzie Guillen is the runner at first, a possible tying run. He has 5 steals for the year. 3-2 Cleveland leading. Well, Mike Hargrove told us that we had the soundbite from him. We ran at the beginning of the telecast, but Wright could end up being the great one. There's one. Vizquel to first, not in time. Durham has excellent speed. And that was started nicely by Tony Fernandez.
I think Vizquel caught that ball barehanded.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
I don't even know why he brings the glove out there.
No joke. I mean, he'll catch a regular ground ball barehanded and throw it. Let's take a look here. I mean, you're right. This is a very nice play by Fernandez. He catches the ball behind the bat, and watch, he feeds it from down under, right down there. And yes, he caught it barehanded and fired to first base. But not in time. As you mentioned, Durham runs well. We'll get a better angle here. Just barehanded, touches the bag, and fires to first base.
So 2 men are gone. Now Durham is a threat to run. And it doesn't get far enough away from Tony for him to advance there. Durham is the White Sox stolen base leader. 31 steals, including 1 tonight. Cameron has also stolen tonight. But that was against Jared Wright. So we'll see now Mormon, how effective he is at keeping the runner close. Dave Martinez, the hitter. Grounded out, walked and singled. 1 for 2 officially. Well, it means the possible tying run, Joe, and with 2 down, I think he's got to try and steal.
Well, I think he's trying to get a rhythm, but it's not that easy against some left-handers.
That's a foul. Meanwhile, there's Dave Martinez just trying to keep the inning going and let Frank Thomas try and take care of business.
Yeah, well, the big fellows up next, Thomas and Bell, they're the ones, as Martinez said, they get paid to drive in runs.
Yeah. Well, that also may be the reason why Terry Bevington does not want to risk Durham running here. He'd like to see if they can get a chance to get Frank up there with a couple of men on. Meanwhile, Cleveland's bullpen is still busy. There's a big right-hander, the veteran Plunk, out there. Should Thomas come to bat in this inning? Ray Durham. Young guy, second full year in the big leagues. And he has not had as strong a year this year as he had as a rookie. Really not getting a read out there, is he?
No.
He was leaning back toward first as that pitch came in.
Well, there's 2 ways of reading the left-hander, of course. One, if his right foot goes behind the rubber, he has to go to the plate. What Norman is doing is varying his motion. It's like he's taking his knee behind there, but not his foot. And the other, of course, is reading his hips to see which ways his hips are going. See right there, he closed his hips, and right there, he's coming to first base. It's very simple, to be honest with you, to be able to read left-handers, but it's something that takes a long time to do. You see right there, he can't go to the plate if he closes like that, so that's how you read him.
He can't go to the plate if he closes.
If he comes towards first base with his leg, as he did there, he can't go to first base because that's a move toward first. You can't throw to the plate from there. The point is not that he closes his hips, but if his hips close toward first base when he starts his leg over that way.
Durham, the possible tying run. He's at first, 2 down. Frank Thomas is on deck.
fact, if you come out next Saturday, I'll get you out there and we'll get a guy on the mound and I'll show you what I'm talking about.
All right. Out of Camden Yards.
Yeah, Camden Yards. We got a little early.
Then we could get Jimmy Key.
No, let's get Randy Myers. Key might be a little tough.
Key is tough. He's one of the real tough ones.
He got it.
He got it picked off. Tony to second. The tag by Vizquel, and the side is retired. So Martinez will lead it off for the 8th inning. Still 3-2 Cleveland. We're at the Jake. 3-2 for Cleveland as we head into the last of the 7th inning. And it will be for the Cleveland Indians, Marquise Grissom, Omar Vizquel, and then Tony Fernandez. And Alvin Mormon with the pickoff to end the White Sox hopes in the first half of the inning.
John, remember I said that you could take your knee behind the rubber, but not your foot? See, he doesn't take his knee behind the rubber, so he can go to first base, and that's what he does, and he's got him picked off. You have to be able to read whether his foot goes behind the rubber or his knee. And you can take the knee, but not the foot. So a good move there by Norman, and he got Durham.
That's kind of a Jimmy Key type move, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, he gets it right to the very edge there. Is a base hit to right field by Marquise Grissom against Doug Graybeck. Only the 4th hit for the powerful Cleveland Indians against Graybeck. Pitched a heck of a game tonight, but he's trailing. Now Mike Pasek comes up out of the Chicago dugout. Looked like he started to head out to the mound, Joe, and then he got called back in.
Well, I think if you are the Indians here, you have to make something happen. I mean, I think you have to come up with another run here. Whether you bunt with Vizquel or whether you let Grissom steal a base. You know how Grissom's legs feel. If they feel good, then you go ahead and let him steal a base. If you do not think he can steal it, then you have to bunt him over. I think you're in a pennant race. One more run right here can win you a pennant, so I think you have to go for it.
Well, Grissom, of course, who used to be an outstanding base stealer, rather prolific in the National League. Here's Tony Castillo, the left-hander, Keith Falk, the right-hander. And with that very thing in mind, I guess, Bevington is going to bring in the lefty to face Vizquel and try and keep Grissom close. 3-2 Cleveland. We'll be back. Well, the veteran Doug Graybeck pitched a heck of a ball game tonight in this ballpark against this team, but he cannot win it. He leaves trailing. And with a runner at first, Marquise Grissom. 6+ innings, 3 runs, 4 hits allowed. And Grissom is his responsibility. Tony Castillo has come on to face Omar Vizquel with Grissom at first. Vizquel tied for the American League lead in sacrifice bunts, as you see Castillo's numbers. But you want something else here, Joe, don't you?
Well, no, I think I would sacrifice right here personally.
Looks like that's what he...
Yeah, I would sacrifice because, again, you're trying to win a pennant, John, and one more run in this situation could win you a pennant. I think that's the way you have to think. With 20 games left, 25 games left, you have to think about what every run means down the stretch.
He had shown that he intended a bunt, as Castillo had thrown that previous ball over to first. And he was, of course, squared around there to bunt.
Well, that's exactly what I would do, you know, if I was managing. I'd say one more run here. I don't want to go through Frank Thomas and Albert Bell and all these guys 2 more times with a 1-run lead.
And what about Grissom stealing second base?
Well, he hasn't been stealing bases. He had not stolen a base in 37 ball games, 1 in 37 as of last Sunday. So, I mean, he has not been running very much. I shouldn't say Sunday, the last time the game I looked at. He has not been running much, so I don't think I would risk it. I would make sure I got him to second base.
Bunted foul. 1 ball and 1 strike. The switch hitting Fernandez on deck, then the left-handed batting Giles after him.
I think what will happen, John, is if Vizquel can't get him over, then I think you'll see Grissom try to steal the bag.
Grissom is back. Musgrove has other options now, and he could start the run and try to hit and run play. Vizquel pretty good at that. Grissom has stolen as many as 78 bases in a season, but it's been a few years since he did that.
Well, he's had leg problems the last couple of years, John, off and on. That was a balk almost if you're not supposed to deceive the runner. I mean, he didn't even stop. He just came and hit his belt and kept going. Now the umpires are kind of looking at each other. If he does that again, I bet you they call a balk.
You saw Marquise back in his Expos days, a prolific base dealer. Last when he went to Montreal. To Atlanta. Well, now they've got him hung up. A busted hit and run play. And he's out. Man.
Well, that's exactly what we saw between innings. We saw them talking about a delayed steal. I think this was actually supposed to be a hit and run, delayed steal, a little of both here. And he did not take off. And he got caught out there. But that's why I said to you, I did not like the idea of hitting and running. Because too many things can go wrong. See, he was starting back to first base, then he got caught in between. That's just poor execution there.
3-2 now to Vizquel.
See, there are times when you take chances, John. Most of the year you might hit and run in this situation, whatever. But again, I think you're down the stretch. You're down, to the end of a pennant race. You do things fundamentally correct and make it happen the way you want it to happen.
Robin Ventura. Number 2. Fabregas almost blew the play anyway, even though he had Grissom hung up out there. Did not make a very good throw to second base, but Guillen was able to get the tag on. 2 down and Fernandez.
He was talking about a delayed steal.
Yeah, I was talking.
Okay.
You're having a meeting over there with somebody else, aren't you? 2 down, and Tony Fernandez is coming up. I mean, there's a weird play because if it was a hit and run,
well,
I mean, Vizquel didn't swing.
Yeah, but what happened? What happened? It started at first base. Actually, Grissom broke back. Vizquel saw he broke back, so he didn't swing. That's exactly what happened. And then Grissom knew it was a hit and run, so now he takes off. So.
Field line by Fernandez. This could be trouble. It's gone. The 9th home run of the year for Tony Fernandez. And that leadoff spot continues to kill the White Sox.
Right down the right field line. It's very short here. It's 325 plus. There's not a high wall there. And if you hit that ball right down the line, it seems to carry well down that area too.
Well, that one really looked like it carried well. Doug Graybeck. And he's on line for a loss tonight, even though he pitched very well. So 2 down. Fernandez homer, his 9th of the year. Brian Giles, the hitter. 4-2 for Cleveland. So they get that run after all.
Yeah.
They don't manufacture it. They get it their favorite way of hitting the long ball.
But I think it's a good time to realize that for every manager, for all the teams, when you're down the stretch and you're trying to win a pennant, the little things you do, to get one more run here and there will win the pennant for you.
Off the glove of Castillo. Here's Durham's play.
Man, nice.
Out at first. Beautifully done by Ray Durham. Now the White Sox will take their best shot. They're down by 2. It'll be Dave Martinez, but then Frank Thomas and Albert Bell don't go away. Cleveland leading now 4-2 as we go to the top of the 8th inning. Tony Fernandez in place of the injured Bip Roberts. Got the Indians a run they really needed there.
Well, the fastball was tailing away, and Tony Fernandez went the other way with it, right down the line. And the ball was carrying very well just inside the foul pole as a home run. Here's Castillo as he came in. He's very upset because he did the job to get 2 outs and then couldn't close the inning out. Now, this is a great play by Durham. I mean, this is a tough play for a second baseman. He makes it on the run. He makes a great play, John, and he's not even from Oakland.
Beautifully done. And now here's Dave Martinez, the man who just barely kept his toe on the bag, apparently, to hold in that throw. And his job now to get on base in front of the big guys. He faces Alvin Mormon taking a strike. Martinez, then Frank Thomas and Albert Bell. They have both been shut down tonight by Jarrett Wright. That's out of play. By the way, Bibb Roberts suffered a bruised right knee. That's what knocked him out of the game.
Well, let's hope he's not going to be out very long, because he has been a catalyst for this ball club, and they see what he can do to help them not only maybe win the pennant, but get farther down the road than that.
0-2 the count to Dave Martinez. Marquise Grissom, and there's one away. Here's the play that put Bibb Roberts out of the game. It was with Robin Ventura running back in the 6th inning.
And Bibb runs at him, and Robin does his job, and Bibb gets hurt. And I said, okay, you're right, Joe. I forgot, and it hurt. Well, and I think it's because he hadn't been playing second base. He did forget. And, you know, he paid the price. But I think he's going to be all right. You know, he's out walking, and I'm glad to see he's not injured any more than it appears.
We got a pitching change now. Mormon is gone. He did his job. And now Mike Jackson, the veteran, with a great slider to face Thomas. And Mike Jackson and Frank Thomas stands in and immediately starts him with that slider. This guy's one of the best around. He's the setup man for Cleveland now. He's been around a long while doing this job.
He was a setup man for Rod Beck in San Francisco, I think, when he may have had his best year.
1993.
Yeah, and so he knows his role. He was a closer while Mesa was out.
Now Thomas is quickly in a hole. 0-2. Frank has walked. He on a kind of a half swing is fouled out to the first baseman, and he has grounded into an inning-ending double play. And he can get aboard here. Albert Bell would have a chance to tie the game.
John, you could see right there he was looking slider, and he got the fastball.
1-2. Albert Bell preparing his bat. Thomas and Bell are combined 0 for 5 with 2 double play balls. Right field, but right there to Ramirez. Now Albert Bell, maybe for the final time in 1997 in Cleveland. He is 0 for 11 in this series. But even here, if he were to launch one, it only would bring them to within 1 run because of the Fernandez home run.
And that's why that 1 run was so important.
A strike. He has not hit the ball out of the infield tonight. This is the first time that he has come to bat against somebody other than young Jarrett Wright.
Well, one thing I like about Albert, even though right now he's 0 for 9 or 10 in this series, he is very patient. I mean, if you look at his eyes, he is relaxed at the plate. I mean, just look. I mean, he just looks very relaxed to me. He's just not getting base hits, but he doesn't look like he's trying too hard. He looks very relaxed.
One ball, 1 strike to Albert Bell. 2 down, nobody out. Fastball down the right field line. A long run for Ramirez. Back out of play. So now it is 1 ball and 2 strikes to Albert Bell.
You know, he looks very defensive at the plate, but a lot of that could be caused by the way that Jarrett Wright pitched him. You know, he was pitching him very tough, he and Frank Thomas, so that can cause you to be a little defensive.
Robin Ventura would be next. Just missing on the inside. Jackson took a couple of steps toward the dugout.
Yeah, he thought he had that, but the fastball tailed right at the last moment. It looked like it tailed off the plate inside.
Even if Albert just gets on base somehow here, Ventura would have a chance to come up and tie the game. Well, he fought off a real tough pitch there.
And that's what I mean by defensive. I mean, Albert Bell, even with 2 strikes, normally is pretty aggressive. But I mean, watch this. This looks like, you know, pretty much like a singles hitter just trying to stay alive, you know, right there. So he did stay alive, and, you know, maybe he'll get a pitch that he can attack.
Ventura on deck has a double and a homer tonight. Too high. 3-2. I mean, a single for Albert or even a walk could be very effective. Give Ventura a chance. Their third slugger. Back up Thomas and Bell to tie it for them. 4-2. Cleveland is leading. 2 down in the 8th inning. And the battle of wits continues here. Albert making Mike Jackson wait. He walked. And now Ventura will get his chance, and they have a left-hander, the veteran Ossenmacher, ready in the bullpen. And here comes Hargrove. And Ossenmacher will get the call. The bullpen has been a great source of strength for Cleveland here the last couple of months. 4-2 Cleveland. Ossenmacher and Ventura. Morgan, your Sunday night telecasters. And we're in Cleveland. Now we got Ossenmacher coming up here against Robin Ventura. Been a big night for Ventura. Ossenmacher has been in the big leagues for a long time in situations just like this.
Well, that's what he's out there for, to come in and get one left-hander out. And he has a pattern. He's going to try to get him out with breaking balls away, and occasionally he'll throw a fastball off the plate in. I think for Robin Ventura, he should not be up there thinking, well, I need to tie this ball game with one swing. I'm going to try to get a base hit, try to hit something hard in the gap. But if he hangs one inside, then I try to hit it out of the ballpark. But I think here you just have to try to keep the inning going, because Ossenmacher can be tough on left-handed hitters.
Remember one time, as you see Albert Bell over at first base. Remember, I think maybe it was our first year of Sunday Night Baseball. Ossenmacher was with the Cubs. Dramatic game. Sandberg at homer to put the Cubs ahead late. They brought in Ossenmacher to face Barry Bonds with somebody on, and Bonds hit one of those hanging curveballs you're talking about for a home run to win the game for Pittsburgh.
Well, you're going to get a breaking ball. I mean, that's the one thing you can be sure of. If you're the left-handed hitter and you go up there, you're going to get a breaking ball. So try to get one that's hanging and try to do something with it.
See, Ventura has faced Ossenmacher numerous times. Ossenmacher struck him out 4 times in 7 appearances, but Ventura has 2 hits against him.
And I guarantee those 2 were hangers. That figures. Just say you're going to get a breaking ball, he throws him a fastball. But see, if you're Ventura, you give him that because you know that he's going to give you a breaking ball. I mean, you're going to get a breaking ball to hit.
You heard Ventura being booed there after his collision with Bip Roberts. That's a ball. 1 ball and 1 strike. Bip is the new favorite here in Cleveland. I mean, he's made a big impression here in his first weekend at his new ballpark. He doesn't look like he's feeling too badly now, though. Yeah, the fact that he's on the bench is a good sign. There's a breaking ball. Well, you're going to get a breaking ball. I mean, so he had his breaking ball to hit, and that looked like a pretty good pitch to hit. Robin's probably upset with himself because he missed it. Now watch, this one's not down and away. It's pretty much a breaking ball that just kind of hangs right there. It's right there for Robin to hit, and he fouls it. And that's what gets you in trouble with these types of pitchers who are specialized in getting one hitter out. On the breaking ball. That's the tough breaking ball. You had the good one to hit. You fouled it. Now he makes a good pitch. So the Cleveland bullpen has been up to the job up till now. Jose Mesa, I'm sure, for the night. Ramirez, Tomey, and Justice. ESPN Sunday Night Baseball. Got 2 more Sundays with the 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific starting times. I want to remind you now, tomorrow at 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific, it'll be Dodger star Mike Piazza with Chris Myers is a special guest on Up Close. That's tomorrow at 6 Eastern on ESPN. Piazza getting a lot of support now for an MVP candidacy. The great stretch run he has put on for the Dodgers, who in turn are having their own great stretch run. They won again today. They've just taken 3 in a row from the red-hot Florida Marlins, the first team to really handle them in quite some time.
Well, I tell you what, Mike Piazza deserves all the recognition he gets because, I mean, he's been unbelievable. And, you know, he and a couple other candidates, Craig Biggio, Bagwell, there are a few candidates in the National League, Larry Walker, of course.
Here's Manny Ramirez against the new Chicago pitcher, Matt Karchner. Ramirez is flying to left, grounded to third, and he singled home a big run in the 5th. It was the run with 2 down that put Cleveland ahead. Fastball a strike. Karchner, since taking over the closer's job after the trade of Roberto Hernandez, has been sensational. He has converted every save that they've asked him. Big up. That's 2-1 now. Jim Thome and Dave Justice. So he's had to be real strong here. See that 13 straight save conversions since the trade of Roberto Hernandez. You got all the big sluggers here. Ramirez, Thome, and Justice. And even Matt Williams if somebody gets on.
Well, Matt Williams needs another at bat to try to extend his hitting streak. He's got a 22-game hitting streak, and he's 0 for 3 tonight. 0 for 2 with a base on ball.
3-1 the count. Shallow center. Manny Ramirez has his second hit. Well, you can certainly see why he's hitting up over 330 for the year.
Johnny has a big bat, and he kind of fights the ball off of him. And that's what keeps him from pulling off and pulling. He's got a pretty heavy bat. And he said to me, well, he said, when I was young, he's 25 years old. He said, when I was young, Joe, I could hit it way up in those left field seats. He said, but now I can't do it. I only have 24 home runs. I said, only.
Must be hell getting old like that.
Yeah, you're right.
25 already. Seemed like just yesterday he was a kid. Here's Jim Thome. He has a home run tonight, number 37.
You see why Karchner has some success, though, Johnny. I mean, he kind of goes right after you. They say, hey, I'm going to try to get you to hit this ground ball off this sinker. I'm going to come after you. And he's doing that. Make him hit the ball.
Jim Thome, another one of the old guys. He just turned 27 a couple of weeks ago. He had 38 home runs last year. He's got 37 so far this year. And they've got 3 guys with 30 or more. The 3rd time in club history they've done that. First time was back in '87 with Joe Carter, Corey Snyder, and Brooke Jacoby with the 3. And that's a ball. 2-1.
And, you know, if Ramirez can get hot, he's got 24. They could join the Dodgers and the Colorado Rockies.
Yeah.
4 guys with 30 or more.
And the Dodgers might do it again this year. They've got 4 guys closing in on 30. Actually, I think the Rockies may have 5 or 6 closing in on 30 this year.
Yeah, they got quite a few.
Larry Walker, another guy having an MVP type season. He's got 42. Castillo's got 38. Galarraga's got 36. And Ellis Burks has 28 for the Rockies. That is caught by Cameron. Goes back behind the runner to first base. Ramirez is back. Nice save there by Dave Martinez.
It is an adventure when Ramirez is on base, that's for sure. In fact, a funny incident last week, he did the slide at second base and was tagged out. And they took him out of the ball game. Mike Hargrove took him out of the game. So yesterday he hits the ball in the gap and he slides into second base and there wasn't even a play on him. So they all kind of stood up and laughed at him from the dugout. Now here is Ramirez. You go halfway, not 3/4. I mean, if the throw's on line, he's probably out at first base.
Now Dave Justice. He is 0 for 3. Ramirez had one where what was it? He stole second base and then got up and just turned around and went back to first. And of course they tagged him out. And Mike Parker said, I don't think I've ever seen that in my whole life. All these years in baseball, and I'd never seen that.
And the point was, no one decoyed him. No one told him it was a foul ball. He just thought it was a foul ball and went back.
I guess assumed it was a foul.
The funny thing about him, you know, he's such a good-natured guy, you can't stay mad at him. You know, he'll do some things, they'll get mad at him, and then they end up laughing with him because, you know, he just seems to do some of these things quite often.
And they laugh with him, especially because he hit 330.
Yeah, well, that's a good point.
Guy does some great things out there.
If you're hitting 220, they probably wouldn't laugh.
Yeah.
You're right. But I had to laugh when he told me, he said, yeah, when I was younger, man, I could hit him on the upper deck. He's 25 years old.
Showing on the count. Dave Justice not been able to get the ball out of the infield tonight. 3-1. Matt Williams is on deck. Sports Center will be coming up right after the ball game. We're in the last of the 8th inning at Jacobs Field in Cleveland. The Cleveland Indians are leading 4-2 over the Chicago White Sox. 3-2. Another pretty good pitch there by Karchner.
Well, Justice went a little bit out of his element there. I mean, he reached out on that fastball away and tried to pull it. But I think, you know, he's a little frustrated because he doesn't have a hit. And he's been swinging the bat so well.
Ramirez is running. And it was ball 4.
Well, they're going to check down in Merriweather, and he says no, so ball 4. You're right.
Yeah, the plate umpire had called it ball 4, and then after throwing to second, Fabregas appealed to the umpire at third on the check swing, and Merriweather ruled no swing. And I think if an umpire does anything but rule with the plate umpire in that play, Joe,
that's a problem.
then it's a bad call by that umpire.
You can see that Terry's very upset about it.
He wanted that to be ruled a swing. And had it been ruled a swing, it would have been a double play, and this inning would have been over. And Ramirez was out at second, called out by Terry Kraft. But, of course, he only would have been called out if, as it turned out, if it had not been a walk. He's entitled to a free pass over to second base on the walk.
Well, Bevington's waiting for him to come out there. That's why he's mad. He's just waiting. He's not even making any move. He's just waiting for somebody to come out there so he can let him know how he feels about it. Because you can't come out and argue balls and strike. But if you're at the mound and they come out there, I guess you can say what you want. And you see he's very, very upset.
Yeah, I thought he looked pretty upset, Joe.
Well, we'll take a look and see. Man, that's a long ways. It looked like, I mean, you can tell, I mean, it looked like it's a nice throw and catch and tag. Tag there, he's definitely out at second base.
Davey Nelson, the first base coach, listen to him here.
Stay on the base, stay on the base, stay on the base.
Stay on the base. Yeah. That's what you were talking about, John. They don't want him to come back to first.
Yeah, he doesn't hurt to tell him to stay on the base. So it's a walk for Justice. And that replay from the side, you can certainly see why Bevington was so upset. Well, Matt Williams' 22-game hitting streak is very much on the line right here. I mean, that was a big call.
Yeah, and
the inning would be over right now if they'd ruled that a swing.
Yeah, and I thought Bevington handled it pretty well. You can't come out and argue that. So what he did was go to the mound and make them come to him. See, and that's the way it happened. Jim Evans had to come out to him, and then he got a chance to speak his piece.
And I give Jim Evans some credit there, Joe, for keeping a cool demeanor because he didn't overreact to it.
Right. But I think he understood, like you're saying, how important a play that was.
Big game. White Sox will be 8 games out and just about finished. And Matt Williams has extended his hitting streak and driven in a huge run. 5-2 Cleveland.
gets that hitting streak going, and that's what he was talking about, hitting everything back to the big part of the field. And we haven't seen him pull a ball the entire evening. And he gets a line. This pitch here is away. You see that good pitch from Karshner, low and away. And watch Matt. He goes out there and gets it, just lines it right back through the middle. And that's what he's been doing so successfully lately.
That's his 96th RBI of the year. Now Sandy Alomar. Ball one.
Now, a lot of people have said it's an off year for Matt, but he actually leads the Indians in runs batted in. Jim Thome now has 95, and so he has 96.
Those two plus Justice all with an excellent chance to reach 100 RBIs. Big swing foul. 1 ball and 1 strike to count. Well, there's Justice at second with Matt Williams over at first. Now, wouldn't it, just for the sake of discussion, Joe, be amazing? Let's say Matt Williams gets up over 40 games of this hitting streak, and we can point back to this night that umpire's call gave him the chance to extend it after it might have been dead after 22, because that inning would have been over had they called it a swing. It's deep and foul down the right field line.
John, that's why I was saying when we did Garcia Power last week, I was saying to you that the hitting streaks are skill, but there's a lot of luck involved. I mean, you have to have a lot of luck. You can hit a lot of line drives, and sometimes they catch them all. But you've got to have some luck involved, and it was lucky here that Matt Williams gets another chance. I mean, I was playing with Pete Rose when he had a 44-game hitting streak. When he was at about 25, he got a lucky break.
1-2 the count. Off the fist foul, and he broke his bat in that one.
Pete Rose's break was a lot luckier than this, in that he made the last out in the 8th inning. We're on the road. He made the last out in the 8th inning in Philadelphia. And we batted all the way around in the top of the 9th. And he got up with 2 outs. And he beat out a bunt for a base hit that extended to like 27 games. And then he went on up to 44.
And did you guys just do that for him?
Oh, yeah. He was our teammate. Yeah. We said, we'll give you another shot. We'll give you one more.
Damn nice of you.
Yeah.
1 ball and 2 strikes to count to Sandy Alomar. He's 0 for 3. 5-2, and the fans are chanting Joey. Sort of a taunt toward the former Cleveland Indian Albert Bell, who when he first came to the major leagues was known as Joey Bell. Well, his given name is in fact Albert. Later on he asked to be called Albert Bell. It's a full countdown to Alomar.
Well, it's a situation where, you know, if you're Mike Hargrove, you got a guy out there that's been making pretty good contact for you. Do you put the hit and run on?
Justice at second. Now, Justice has had some knee problems, a lot of physical problems, but including a knee problem. Matt Williams at first. They're not going anywhere. And that's into the second deck off to the right. 3 balls and 2 strikes. Mike Hargrove, he's been the beleaguered manager of the Indians this year. It's talked that perhaps his job was on the line. Another foul by Alomar. And in a way, it's kind of hard to understand that, because he came here when this ball club was losing 100 games, and was the guy who brought them to the top. I mean, with some excellent talent, but he put it all together. I mean, you talk about the bottom line, and his bottom line is pretty good.
Yeah. Kind of like George Seifert of the 49ers. They think it was a organization Super Bowl victory when he won. They seem to think the same thing here.
Should be 2. There's 1. They're into first.
His turn.
Double play. Jose Mesa back in his role of closer for the Cleveland Indians. With Cameron, Fabregas, and Ordonez due up, it's 5-2 Cleveland. Coming up next, Sports Center. There's Dan Patrick and Kenny Mayne. They're in the studio
Drinking coffee.
and they're oiling the pipes, Joe. You've got to lubricate the pipes, get the heat on them to be in full voice, and they'll be following our Sunday night telecast with Sports Center, the complete recap, the new 90-minute version of the Sunday night Sports Center right after the game. And there is Jose Mesa, who has been called in now to try and dispatch the White Sox post-haste so we can get right to Sports Center. So stay with us. Now, Mesa, this is not the big, overpowering Mesa we saw 2 years ago or for much of last year. I mean, he's had lots of problems, starting with some legal problems at the beginning of the year. But lately, Joe, he's become the overpowering guy again to close games for Cleveland. He's back in that role.
Maybe it's the goatee, because he's extended that hair a little bit down his face. But you're right, he got off to a slow start. A lot of it had to do with his lack of spring training and all the things that were going on in his life. But he has won the closer's job back. Mike Jackson's gone back to the setup role, and Mesa is the guy they need to be the closer, because that's what he does best.
Yeah, well, so watch for the heat. Now, coming up on Wednesday, the Wednesday night baseball doubleheader from Fenway Park. The Yankees with Tino Martinez take on Mo Vaughn and Nomar Garcia Parra, and the Boston Red Sox, the old ancient rivals, renewing hostilities. That's at 7:30 Eastern. Then the second half from Dodger Stadium. The first place Atlanta Braves against the first place Dodgers. Chipper Jones, Andrew Jones of the Braves taking on Piazza, Karras, and the Dodgers. That's at 10:30, 7:30 Pacific. Don't miss it. Here's Mike Cameron against Mesa. And that is ball one. Cleveland tried to sweep this series from the White Sox to knock Chicago 8 games out, which is particularly big for Cleveland since they got 4 in Chicago next weekend. High pop-up. Jim Thome. Cameron is 0 for 4. Now it will be George Fabregas. Albert Bell tonight 0 for 3 with a walk, 0 for 11 in this series. Another turbulent weekend for him in Cleveland, or another turbulent trip here. They were here during the week in June. Fabregas on the run is Grissom. There's not too many better than Grissom out there.
You're right. Well, you see, he got a great jump on that ball, too.
Now everybody here at the Jake, more than 43,000 paid admissions tonight. Rising to their feet as Maglio Ordonez tries to keep the White Sox alive, and the Cleveland fans are smelling the sweep. Those fans, I think, were expecting the sweep. Jarrett Wright, the 21-year-old right-hander, who at the moment with the injury to John Smiley is their 3rd starter, will have a heavy burden in the postseason if Smiley can't come back. And he pitched a real strong one here tonight. A bit low. 95 miles per hour there. 1 ball and 1 strike to Ordonez, who is 1 for 3. Fans chanting sweep. Chanting and with the unison clapping as well. We'll get into this sweep business in a big way here.
Well, I think this series was very big for Cleveland in that they reestablishes their hold on first place in the division, but also with the fact they have to go to Chicago for 4. Yeah. And this could take some of the wind out of Chicago's sails. Or take it all out.
I think this would have him completely run aground, Joe.
Yeah.
This is Chicago hitting a reef. Major damage. I think they'll be all but sunk.
Yeah, because I mean, with 4 games left next week, it could have, you know, if they could have stayed close, it would be a big deal.
It'll be 8 games out with a loss here, only 20 to play for the White Sox. Too low, and it's 3-2.
Well, as Yogi would say, this one's not over yet.
No, that's not what he said.
Okay.
It ain't over until it's over.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Let's get it right. You're right.
Yeah.
Have to be accurate.
Don't misquote Yogi. Mesa wraps it up in a hurry. And the Cleveland Indians not only establishing their hold on the division, but maybe sending a message to the rest of the American League. And after stumbling for much of the year, the Cleveland Indians are pointing toward October and may be heard from rather loudly yet. Cleveland wins it 5-2. Jarrett Wright gets the win over Drabek. 5-2 was the final. Stay tuned now. SportsCenter is coming up next. John Miller, for Joe Morgan and our entire ESPN crew, thanks for joining us. Good night from Cleveland. This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports.